My name is Ren. I was sleeping in a stable, covered in mud and hay, when someone blasted me with cold water. I jumped up coughing, thinking the stable owner was throwing me out again. But no. Standing there was some guy in fancy golden armor, shining like the sun. Behind him was a small, shy girl holding a staff, a mage. The armored man called himself a hero chosen by the gods. He held up a glowing book and told me I was some kind of sage of destiny. He wanted me to join him, defeat the demon king, and save the world. I almost laughed. Save the world? I used to care about that. When I first came to this world, I tried to help people. I made tools to grow more food. I built machines to make life easier. And what did I get? The church called me a heretic. Nobles destroyed everything I made and nearly burned me alive. After I crawled out of that mess half dead, I stopped caring. Now all I want is half a piece of bread. The world can burn for all I care. I told the hero I wasn't interested. I even patted his shoulder. He slapped my hand away like I was something disgusting. I looked at him. His useless fancy armor, his clean sword that had never seen real battle, his chin held high even in a place like this. Everything about him screamed rich and spoiled. So I told him what I really thought. I said his goddess must be blind to pick someone like him. That broke him. He punched me in the face. I hit a post and tasted blood. But something woke up inside me. I've already faced death before. Why would I be afraid now? I cursed his goddess and threw myself at him like a wild dog. I landed one good punch right on his nose with my dirty fist. It didn't hurt him much, but the mud and smell on my hand made him lose his mind. He beat me to the ground, kicked me, punched me, over and over. All I could do was curl up and take it. But I laughed the whole time. At him, at the prophecy, at this stupid world. The little mage finally stopped him. She grabbed his arm, crying, begging him not to kill me. He stopped, looked down at me like I was trash, said the book must be wrong, that I was no sage, just a crazy heretic. Then he walked away. The mage stayed a moment longer. She put a healing potion on the ground near me and whispered an apology. Then she ran after him. I lay there alone, staring at the ceiling, hurting everywhere. A hero. What a joke. What I didn't know was that someone was watching me from the shadows. Someone I hadn't noticed at all. After the hero left, I hid the healing potion inside my torn shirt. No way I was drinking it. That thing was worth money. I figured I could trade it to old Tom for 10 loaves of black bread and a pot of stew. With that plan in my head, I closed my eyes and drifted off. But something woke me. The sun should have been hitting my face by now, yet it was still cool. And there was a strange smell, perfume. In a stable that always reeked of manure and rats, perfume meant trouble. My survival instincts kicked in. I had one strategy: play dead. If I don't wake up, no problem can find me. I slowed my breathing and started fake snoring. It didn't work. A woman's voice rang out, loud and dramatic, saying she'd found a sick vagrant in the stable and should call the owner. That was the one threat I couldn't ignore. If that fat stable owner found me here, I'd lose my sleeping spot and end up under the cold stone bridge outside town. In this autumn weather, that could kill me. I sat up fast, hands raised, ready to negotiate. But it wasn't a nosy townsperson. It was a tall, striking woman in tight leather armor. She asked me straight out if I was the sage. I flopped back into the hay and pulled some over my face. "You've got the wrong person," I mumbled. The sage went out and turned right. "I'm just a useless man waiting for his end," she laughed and introduced herself. "Cecilia of the Night Shadow, one of the Demon Lord's lieutenants. Specialty, assassination. Great. Just great." But I wasn't scared. I was too tired to be scared. I told her the truth. The book hadn't fully bound itself to me yet. If she killed me, it would fly off and find some hot-blooded hero who actually wanted to fight. But if she left me alive, the hero would lose a powerful advantage forever. Why kill someone who was no threat? She thought about it and admitted I was right. Then she tried a different approach. She offered me everything: wealth, power, servants, if I joined the Demon Lord's army. I turned it all down. Wealth without strength to protect it is worthless paper. Power just means paperwork and blame. And servants? Look at me. I'd collapse from exhaustion in 3 days. I wasn't going anywhere. I was staying right here in my hay. Every offer she made, I shot down. I could tell she was getting more interested instead of angry, and that made me nervous. Then I noticed the look in her eyes change. "Hold on, that look is weird. Don't come closer. I haven't bathed in days." Her fist was the last thing I saw. Everything went black. When she knocked me out, I didn't know where she was taking me. All I knew was that my plan of doing nothing and bothering no one had just completely fallen apart. When I woke up, my head was pounding. I looked around and found myself in a huge, empty hall with giant black pillars. No gold, no throne, no carpet, just cold bare stone. The place looked more like an unfinished warehouse than a demon castle. I spotted Cecilia leaning against a pillar with that annoying smile. I was about to curse her out when a face appeared right in front of mine, so close our noses almost touched. A man with silver hair and deep eyes, wearing a fine robe. He smiled and said something about the esteemed sage waking up. I asked if he was the Demon King. He just tilted his head and told me to guess. I didn't care. If they brought me here, it meant I had value. So I lay down on the cold floor and made my demands: a soft bed, hot bath, roasted meat, and ale. Miss any of those, and I'd bite my tongue and die right there. Then their precious book would fly off and find some righteous hero who'd actually want to destroy them. The silver-haired man didn't flinch. Instead, he started asking questions. Why did the artifact choose me? I had no magic, no battle energy, no records in any school or church. It was like I appeared out of nowhere. Then he said something that made my blood boil. He called my inventions completely powerless junk. I could take being called useless. I could take being beaten in a stable. I knew I wasn't some great genius. I was just someone who remembered things from my old world and tried to use them here. But I would never let anyone call those things trash. The machines, the tools, the water systems, they were the work of countless generations of human wisdom. That was my one line nobody got to cross. I jumped up and charged at him. Those aren't trash. They improve productivity. They help people eat. They advance civilization. What happened next was strange. He didn't use magic. He didn't blast me with some terrifying power. He just rolled up his sleeves. We fought like street dogs, punching, grabbing, rolling across the stone floor. No spells, no energy, just fists. Somehow his strength was close to mine, even though I was half-starved. He locked his arm around my neck and taunted me. If my inventions were really so great, why did the church burn me at the stake? If they couldn't even protect themselves, how were they anything but trash? I threw him off. Years of frustration exploded out of me. Every insult, every failure, every time this world spit on everything I believed in. I grabbed his collar, blood running down my face, and shouted right into his eyes. One day I'll prove it. I'll use what you call trash to bring down every arrogant superhuman. And even that blind god above, my voice echoed through the empty hall. Then he smiled. Not angry, not mocking, satisfied. Excellent, he said. I look forward to that day. He stood up, straightened his collar, and held out his hand. Let's start over. I am Mephist, Lord of all realms. What you just experienced was part of the interview. Congratulations, proud sage, you're hired. I spat blood on the ground and wiped my mouth. I knew the silver-haired demon had played me. He provoked me on purpose, and I fell for it like a fool. But honestly, I didn't care that much. After years of suffering in this world, I had no loyalty to the human side. The nobles and the church were no different from demons. They all hoarded power and treated ordinary people like dirt. The so-called holy war between gods and demons was just a show. Common people suffered no matter who won. If the human church destroyed my work, and now the demons were offering me a place to build, why would I refuse? I knew the odds were against me. A regular person trying to challenge a world ruled by magic and gods. Almost impossible. I might die before I got anywhere. But I believed one thing: bodies die, but ideas don't. If I could plant even one seed of progress in this backward world, that would be enough. So I grabbed Mephist's hand and shook it. I'll prove it to you. Cecilia rolled her eyes, said something about going back to spy on the hero, called me a little madman, and melted into the shadows. Once she was gone, I remembered the healing potion I'd hidden under my shirt. I pulled it out and drank every last drop. The bruises on my face faded, and the soreness eased up. Best decision I'd made all day. I asked Mephist who the Demon King actually was. He said she was busy. Piles of work. Could hardly spare time to meet a human. That didn't match what I'd imagined at all. I'd pictured someone sitting on a throne of bones, sipping wine. She sounded more like an overworked office clerk. Mephist said she'd be at the dining hall, so we headed there. I expected a grand feast, roasted cattle, barrels of wine, chaos and noise. Instead, the hall was quiet. A few demons sat at clean wooden tables in simple clothes, eating silently. No chaos. No evil laughter. Nothing I expected. Mephist brought me a tray. A bowl of thick gray-brown soup with some unknown roots floating in it, and a small piece of tough dried meat. "This is it?" I asked. "You high-ranking demons eat this?" He told me that in the demon realm, having meat at all was a luxury. The land here was soaked with wild magic, so much that seeds either burned up or turned into poison. The same power that made demons strong also made their world unable to grow food. I started eating. The soup had no flavor and the roots scratched my throat, but I was so hungry it tasted amazing. Then I looked out the window. On the cracked red wasteland, I saw a thin little demon girl digging in the dirt with her bare hands. She found something and tried to eat it. An older boy ran over and knocked it away. It was poisonous. The girl sat there and cried, the kind of cry that comes from real, deep hunger. The boy picked her up gently and carried her toward a small stone hut. My hand stopped moving. The food in my mouth lost all taste. My stomach twisted. I wanted to throw up, but I clenched my teeth and forced myself to keep eating. Every bite. Because wasting food is the worst thing you can do. I was eating with my head down when a quiet voice spoke next to me. "Please don't waste food, great sage." I turned and saw a small white-haired girl standing there, only reaching my chest. She wore a patched black robe and had black spiral horns on her head. In her hands was a wooden tray with the same plain soup and dried meat as mine. Mephist stood up, placed his hand over his chest, and bowed deeply. "Greetings, my Lord Demon King." I stared at her. "Huh." I sat there holding my bowl of tasteless soup, staring at the little white-haired girl across from me. This was the Demon King? The terrifying monster that human parents used to scare their children? She was barely chest-high and spoke softer than a librarian. Either the church's spies were blind, or they'd been lying on purpose. Mephist excused himself. Something about greedy merchants raising salt prices by 30% because humans had blocked the trade routes. The Demon King told him to keep things peaceful. Winter was coming, and the frontline soldiers needed salt. After he left, it was just the two of us. She ate her soup quietly with a wooden spoon. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with a worn handkerchief and looked out the window. "Great sage, what do you see through this window?" I thought of the crying demon girl from earlier. "Barren," I said. "Not just barren," she corrected. "There is also suffering." Then she explained everything. The wild magic in the soil killed any crops that tried to grow. But underneath that same soil sat the largest vein of magic crystals on the continent. Crystals that humans used as currency, fuel for enchantments, and symbols of wealth. The cruel joke was that demons were born with magic inside them. Those crystals were just rocks to them. They couldn't eat rocks. But humans wanted those crystals badly. They were too afraid to fight the demons head-on. So instead they teamed up with the church, called it a holy crusade, and blocked all the trade routes. Cut off the food supply. Let hunger do the killing for them. The whole war, all that talk about light versus darkness, gods versus demons, was just a resource grab dressed up in religion. I asked her why they didn't just move somewhere else. With their strength, taking a human farmland should be easy. She was quiet for a long time. "Because this is our home," she said. "Our ancestors were born here and rest beneath this land." Home. I understood that word better than most. I could never go back to mine. After we cleaned up our dishes, she took me outside. It was my first time actually walking on demon land. The soil hummed beneath my feet, like the earth was alive. I crouched down and grabbed a handful. Dark red with black streaks. I rubbed it between my fingers, smelled it. Black soil. Rich, fertile black soil, ruined by the wild magic soaking through it. What a waste. I walked over to the spot where that little demon girl had been digging earlier. The hole was still there. Nearby, I found the thing the boy had knocked from her hand. A small, twisted, knobby root with purple-green patches. No bigger than a finger. I turned it over in my hands, and my heart started beating faster. The Demon King told me it was a cursed poisonous plant. Eating it caused stomach pain, vomiting, throat spasms. Nobody ate them unless they were desperate. But she was wrong. It wasn't some cursed thing. It was a wild potato. Back on Earth, wild potatoes were poisonous too, full of solanine. It took thousands of years of careful selection and cultivation before they became the safe, round potatoes people ate every day. Here in the demon realm, they'd never been cultivated. They were still in their raw, toxic, original form. Poisonous, yes, but I knew how to fix that. I knew several ways to remove solanine. The Demon King noticed the look on my face and tilted her head. What's so special about this thing? I stood up, holding that ugly little root, and looked at her. My Lady Demon King, I said, I think I might have found a way to solve the hunger problem. I told the Demon King I had a way to solve the hunger problem, but I'd need her help. She agreed without hesitation. For someone who watched her people starve every day, nothing was too much to ask. My plan was simple: ash water. An old trick from Earth's history. I had her burn a pile of dry grass and branches into fine ash. She raised her hand, and blue flames turned the whole pile to powder in seconds. Incredible efficiency. If she worked at a chemical plant back home, she'd be Employee of the Year. Then I told her to mix the ash with clean water. She looked confused. Ash was dirty, something connected to death, not food. But she did it anyway. A ball of water floated in the air, the ash swirled in, and it became a cloudy gray liquid. I had her boil it, cool it, filter out the solids. In a normal kitchen, this would take hours. She did it in moments with magic. What was left was a clear, amber liquid floating above her palm. Lye water. Natural alkali made from potassium carbonate in the ash. The poison in wild potatoes, solanine, breaks down completely in alkaline, boiling conditions. Chemistry. Beautiful, simple chemistry. I had her peel the potato and slice it thin. She flicked her fingers, and invisible wind blades cut paper-thin slices faster than any chef I'd ever seen. They dropped into the boiling liquid. I told her it needed hours to cook. She didn't listen. She pulled out a half-done slice and ate it before I could stop her, saying her body could handle a little poison. After chewing slowly, she gave her verdict. A bit bitter, slightly undercooked, but no burning, no cramps, no pain. The poison was nearly gone. It worked. Those poisonous roots covered every hillside in the demon realm. And now they could be turned into food with nothing but ash and water. The Demon King stepped back, bowed her head, and thanked me. Then she looked up and offered me her hand. My name is Ashlia, her real name, given to a human. I understood the weight of that. I straightened my back, dropped the laziness I usually wore like armor, and shook her hand. My name is Ren. That night, I cooked for the entire demon leadership. I cleaned up, put on a fitted black outfit, and prepared a meal in the castle kitchen. The final dish was baked potato cakes with minced beast meat. Simple ingredients, but I made them taste good. Around the long table sat Ashlia at the head, with 8 demon lords on either side. Mephist, Cecilia, a masked warlord in heavy armor, a lion-headed beast man, a hunched undead sorcerer, and others. The 9 most powerful beings in the demon realm. And at the far end, me. A human. Nobody praised the food. The banquet was silent. Everyone knew what was coming. The holy war had been called. The heroes were gathering. Some of the people sitting at this table might not come back. When the meal ended, Ashlia gave her order. Starting tomorrow, all civilians, the old, the sick, the children, would move north. The battle couldn't be avoided, but she wanted to protect as many ordinary people as possible. The demon lords accepted it quietly, like they were accepting death. I slammed my cup on the table. You're powerful enough to crush walls with your bare hands, and you're already giving up before the fight starts. I told them to break through the trade routes. Set traps for the heroes. Fight back when attacked. What kind of strategy was surrender before the first battle? They all looked at me like I was a child asking a foolish question. Ashlia explained. Demons were strong individually, but they fought alone. Humans had a goddess giving them miracles. Elves had their world tree. Dwarves had the god of forging. Every other race had divine protection, sacred weapons, allies. The demons had no gods, no protection, no allies. For thousands of years, they'd risen up, been crushed by God-blessed heroes, retreated to recover, and been hunted again. It wasn't a war. It was a rigged game. I didn't know what to say. I'd thought this was a normal conflict where clever tactics could make a difference. But how do you fight enemies who have cheat codes from the gods themselves? Then a deep laugh broke the silence. It came from Balu, an enormous demon lord shaped like a mountain. He was still eating potato cake, crumbs falling everywhere. He told the others to stop being so dramatic. Yes, they'd lost every time before. But every time before, The story was the same. Maybe this time was different. He pointed at me. For thousands of years, no god ever gave the demons a single grain of food. Yet on my first day, I turned deadly weeds into something edible with nothing but water and ash. He did what the gods could not. Every demon lord at the table turned to look at me. I sat there quietly. I thought about the church that tried to burn me alive. I thought about everything I'd lost. Then I looked at Ashleigh and the others. I picked up a golden, cooked potato from my plate and held it up in the candlelight. Perhaps victory isn't so far away. After the banquet, everyone went their separate ways. The demon lords left to teach their people how to make the poisonous potatoes safe. Ashleigh had disappeared to handle the endless problems of running a broken kingdom. I went to the Grand Library. Mephist managed the place, but he was off arguing with some merchant caravan, so he left me 2 floating magic puppets to grab books from the tall shelves. I knew exactly what I needed to do and what I couldn't do. With just physics and basic science, using only my mortal body and limited time, I could never build technology strong enough to challenge the gods. I couldn't make an engine. I couldn't forge good steel. Even if I had the blueprints in my head, they were useless without the right materials and tools. So I had to find another way. I needed to combine what I knew from my old world with the magic system of this one. The puppets dropped heavy, dusty old books on my desk. I didn't care about powerful forbidden spells or fancy space magic. I wanted the boring stuff nobody else bothered with. Studies on airflow friction and low-level wind magic, boiling points of water slimes, how magic fades in cheap or useless knowledge, everyone thought. Abandoned manuscripts, notes from bored, low-ranking mages. But to me, these were the foundation. You can't build a skyscraper without knowing the ground beneath it. I read for hours. The room went dark around me. Only my candle was left burning. Then the shadows moved, and Cecilia appeared out of nowhere. "You'll scare someone to death showing up like that?" I told her. She ignored that and looked at my books. She didn't understand why a man with no magic would study low-level magic theory. Even if I memorized it all, I still couldn't cast a simple fireball. I tried to explain. Everyone in this world used magic the crude way. Fireballs to burn walls, floods to drown armies. Powerful, but wasteful. What if you used a magic circle to produce steady, controlled heat? Enough to boil water. Then used wind or water magic to move the steam. That steam could drive machines. Machines far stronger than any human or animal. No battle energy needed. Take the useless rules written in these forgotten books and use them to build real power. That was my miracle. She stared at me like I was speaking a different language. Then I asked why she was here instead of spying on the hero like Ashleigh ordered. She got defensive, crossed her arms, and said her shadow teleportation could cross the continent in a heartbeat. She just came to make sure I hadn't burned the library down. Then she turned into purple mist and vanished. I went back to reading. Meanwhile, I later heard what happened back in that little town I'd been sleeping in. The hero Gareth had caused nothing but trouble there. He took the town's last old cows for his meals, the same cows they needed for plowing in spring. He split a street in half with his battle energy because some locals annoyed him, called it justice, and left without paying for repairs. When the little mage asked him about me, the sage from the stable, he got angry, told her never to mention me again, said I probably froze to death under a bridge somewhere. He was planning to have the high priest purify the sacred book so it would find a proper sage. Someone noble, idealistic, and righteous. Someone worthy of traveling with him. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. Noble and righteous. Right. The man who beat a starving vagrant bloody in a stable and stole a poor town's last cows. That was his idea of worthy. I stayed up all night in the library. By the time morning light came through the stained glass windows, my eyes were red and my hair was a mess from pulling at it while thinking. The potato trick was a good start, but I knew it wasn't enough. Wild potatoes grew unpredictably. You couldn't build a civilization on luck. I needed to find a way to grow real, high-yield crops on this cursed demon soil. The problem was simple. The magic in the ground was too wild. Seeds either burned up or turned into poison. So what if I could create a small space with no magic at all? A magic-free bubble where normal plants could grow. That's when Mephist walked in, looking exhausted from arguing with merchants all night. He glanced at my messy desk and asked if I'd learned to cast a water spell yet. I ignored the joke and pulled him over. "Look at this." I found a way to grow normal crops in the demon realm. I showed him my blueprint, a dome-shaped building with a magic suppression array at its base. I called it a greenhouse. The array would cancel out all the wild magic inside, creating clean soil and air where ordinary plants could survive. Mephist's eyes lit up for a moment. Then he shook his head. The problem was power. Crops take months to grow. Keeping a suppression array running that long over a whole field would drain enormous amounts of magic. You'd have to chain demon warriors to the fields like living batteries, pouring magic into the circles day and night. When they ran out, the array would collapse and the wild energy would burn everything to ash. I smiled. He was thinking inside the box. Who said the array has to be powered by people? I pulled out a dusty old book about automatic fortress defense arrays. The idea was already there, large city shields that drew energy from embedded cores instead of mages. All I had to do was swap the attack module for a suppression array and plug in a power source. What power source? Mephist asked. Magic crystals. I slapped the table. Ashleigh had just told me that the demon realm's only real resource was the biggest crystal vein on the continent. But since demons were born with magic inside them, those crystals were worthless to them, just fancy rocks. So we'd stuff those useless rocks into the array and let them run the greenhouses automatically. No warriors needed. No constant supervision. The demon realm's greatest curse, too much magic, too many crystals, no food, would become its greatest advantage. Mephist started to see it. But then he raised another concern. If greenhouses spread across the whole realm, even the largest crystal vein would eventually run dry. I was ready for that too. I pulled out another worn book, a study by a poor human mage named Elk who couldn't afford crystals. He designed a formation that absorbed scattered magic from the air and condensed it into low-grade crystals. In human lands, the air was too thin with magic, so his invention was dismissed as useless. But this was the demon realm. The air here was so thick with magic it could mutate plants. We'd set up gathering formations outside the crystal mines. They'd absorb the magic constantly leaking from the ground and turn it into new crystals. Those new crystals would power the suppression arrays inside the greenhouses. A self-sustaining cycle. Magic from the air becomes crystals. Crystals power the greenhouses. Greenhouses grow food. The demon realm feeds itself, forever. Mephist stared at my messy drawings and dusty books. I could see his whole understanding of the world cracking apart. Then he grabbed my wrist. Hey, what are you? Before I could finish, the Lord of all things forgot every bit of his elegant composure. He yanked me out of my chair, kicked the library doors open, and sprinted down the hall toward Ashleigh's chambers, dragging me behind him. Hurry, great sage. We must see the king right now. This can't wait another second. Mephist dragged me through the castle corridors and stopped in front of a carved wooden door. Then he got a sly look in his eyes, stepped aside, and gestured for me to go first. I didn't think much of it. I figured it was Ashleigh's office. I pushed the door open without knocking. It wasn't an office. Ashleigh was lying on her bed in loose white pajamas, her hair still wet from a bath, legs swinging in the air while she read documents. She looked up. Our eyes met. 1 second. 2 seconds. I stepped back, grabbed the handle, and slammed the door shut. I turned to Mephist, who was staring at the ceiling like nothing happened. Are you doing this on purpose? He spread his hands innocently. I simply stepped aside so the miracle maker could knock. Before I could curse him out, the door opened. Ashleigh stood there in her black robe, face cold as ice. You two better have something important. Otherwise, I'm throwing you both into the abyss river. I shoved the blueprint at her and started explaining everything. The suppression array, the magic crystals as batteries, the gathering formation to make new crystals. Her expression shifted from anger to surprise to something I hadn't seen on her face before. Excitement. Let's go, she said, and grabbed my wrist. She dragged me outside to the wasteland and showed me what real building power looked like. She floated into the air, drew complex formation patterns with her fingertips, and in minutes, a working greenhouse stood on the barren ground. 50 square meters of magic-free space under a transparent dome. I watched with my jaw hanging open. I'd spent all night drawing with charcoal. She waved her fingers, and it was done. Magic was basically a 3D printer combined with a CNC machine. Then she buried a berry seed in the clean soil inside the greenhouse, placed her hands above it, and green light flowed from her palms. The soil shifted. A bright green sprout pushed through, grew taller, sprouted branches and leaves. In 30 seconds, flowers were blooming. "How did you have this power the whole time and still starve?" I blurted out. Mephist explained. Life magic was incredibly rare and expensive. Only the Demon King and a few elite warriors could use it, and it drained enormous amounts of energy. More importantly, life magic could speed up growth but couldn't change the environment. In the past, using it on cursed soil just made plants mutate and die. But inside my greenhouse, with the wild magic stripped away, life magic finally had clean ground to work on. The berry bush grew healthy. No mutations. No poison. It worked. It actually worked. Ashley had turned around, and for the first time I saw the fierce, commanding look of a true ruler on that small face. She ordered Mephist to copy the formation blueprints and send them to every demon lord. Stop unnecessary defenses. Start building greenhouses everywhere. Keep the greedy merchants calm for now. Let them raise prices a little more. Consider it their last meal. Because once the first harvest came in, those blood-sucking traders would pay back everything. Principal and interest. Then she turned to me, crossed her arms, lowered her aura, and bowed. "Great sage. The demon race will never forget your kindness." After that, she noticed how tired I was and told me to rest. She walked ahead, leading me to a room. I followed, confused at first. I thought she was going to point me toward a haystack somewhere. Mephist nudged me and whispered to keep up. The Demon King was personally showing me to my quarters. She brought me to a room on the upper floor. It wasn't big, but it was clean and had a wide window overlooking the whole territory. "This was the bedroom of the previous Demon King, Caesar," she said softly. "Since he sacrificed himself, no one has opened this room." She raised a finger, and a gentle breeze swept through, carrying away years of dust. After she left, I didn't go to bed right away. I sat at the wooden table and opened the drawers. In the first one, I found handmade things, rough wooden animal carvings, a necklace of polished stones, dried wildflowers. They looked worthless, but I could feel they meant everything to whoever owned this room. I didn't touch them. In the second drawer, I found an old, thick notebook. Caesar's diary. I started reading. The early pages were full of fire. The day he was crowned, he swore to make his people the happiest in the world. Then reality crept in. Trade routes blocked. Food prices rising. He led soldiers to hunt dangerous monsters. 30 died, and the meat lasted only 3 days. When the Holy War started, the entries turned bitter. Humans prayed, and their sacred tools healed deadly wounds. His soldiers screamed in muddy water with no medicine. He couldn't understand why. Was it just because they were demons? On the walls hung rough, colorful paintings, stick figures, crooked flowers. Children's drawings. In the drawer were gifts those children had made for their king. In the second half of the diary, Caesar wrote again and again about wanting to give up. He was so tired he even thought about surrendering to the human church, even if they burned him alive. But every time he looked at those children's gifts, he found a reason to keep going. The last page was dated the day before his final battle. The paper was warped with old tear stains. The handwriting was shaky. "I am sorry, my people. I couldn't bring you the future I promised. I am truly an unworthy demon king." The diary ended there. I sat in the chair for a long time. Something heavy pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. I closed the diary carefully. Then I opened the top drawer again and took out everything. The carvings, the necklace, the dried flowers, and arranged them neatly on the table. I looked at them for a while. These small, worthless things that held the hopes of an entire people. The treasures an unworthy king had protected until the day he died. My vision blurred. I crossed my arms on the table, rested my head on them, and fell asleep surrounded by those simple gifts. In my dream, there was no hunger, no war, just a golden wheat field swaying in the wind. When I woke up, the sunset was coming through the window. My neck was sore from sleeping at the desk. I carefully gathered Caesar's things, the carvings, the necklace, the dried flowers, and put them back in the drawer like they were sacred objects. I locked it. Then I took his diary and pressed it against my chest. I stood at the window for a long time, looking out over the demon lands. Then my stomach growled so loud it broke the silence. I hadn't eaten properly in almost a full day and night. I wandered through the castle until I found the kitchen. I expected to scrounge for leftovers, but someone had left a covered plate on the chopping board. Under the lid was a monster steak, some boiled potatoes, and a small bowl of wild vegetable soup. Still warm. I sat down and started eating. The steak was burnt on the outside and nearly raw inside. The potatoes were cut so rough they looked like something chewed on them. The soup had no salt. Terrible cooking. But I ate every bite, even finished the soup completely. Whoever made this had tried their hardest, and I could taste that effort in every clumsy piece. Thanks, I said quietly to the empty kitchen. After eating, I poked around the storage area and found a sack of shriveled green beans in a corner. Cheap goods from some merchant caravan. I cracked one open. The seeds inside were still healthy and full. Green beans, drought-resistant, fast-growing, and their roots fixed nitrogen in the soil. My hands were itching. I grabbed a handful and headed straight for the greenhouse. Inside the magic dome, the air was warm and clean. I rolled up my sleeves, got down on the ground, and started digging small holes with my fingers, burying seeds one by one. Dirt covered my face and nails. I didn't care. I was smiling like an idiot. Footsteps behind me. Ashley walked in and stared at me lying in the mud. Perfect timing. I waved her over. Use water magic on this area, so I don't have to haul water. And pull out that berry bush in the corner. It's hogging space. She gave me a look. I'd forgotten. Inside this greenhouse, all magic was suppressed. Any normal mage who tried casting here would damage their own energy channels. Only she, the Demon King herself, could use magic in this space. And I just casually asked her to water my garden and pull weeds. She sighed, raised her small hand, and gentle rain fell over my freshly planted seeds. Then a breeze swept the berry bush out of the greenhouse. I stood up, dusted off my hands, and admired the moist soil. I could already picture vines climbing the walls and heavy fruit hanging from them. Then I remembered she probably didn't come here just to be my gardener. She told me the Aryan merchant team had made a move. They refused Mephist's offer to stabilize prices and were sending a representative to meet her in half an hour. They thought the human blockade gave them all the leverage that the demons wouldn't dare push back in winter. I asked for detailed intelligence, their finances, their goods, their leaders' personal weaknesses. In business fights, information is the sharpest weapon. Ashley said Cecilia was already gathering everything through her shadow network. Then there's no problem, I said. Get ready for the meeting. I'll teach these people what negotiation really means. She nodded and turned to leave. I stopped her. I reached into my coat and pulled out Caesar's diary. I walked over and placed it carefully in her hands. Before you go face those bloodsuckers, read this. She looked at the yellowed cover, confused at first. Then she recognized it, and something flickered in her calm eyes. I turned back to my field and waved behind me. After you finish reading, take Caesar's frustration and get back everything the demon race has lost. Plus interest. That night I stayed up again in the library, scribbling plans for crossbreeding plants. The idea was simple. Take drought-resistant wheat and mix it with high-yield wheat, then pick the best offspring that had both traits. Back on Earth, this took decades. But here, with Ashley as life magic growing plants in 30 seconds, I could do decades of breeding work in days. Cecilia appeared from the shadows behind me, startling me as usual. She brought the intelligence I'd asked for and picked up my breeding notes while I read through the merchant files. The information was revealing. The Aryan merchant team was a mixed group. Orcs, goblins, humans, looked down on by everyone. They survived by playing both sides. They bought cheap, rotten grain from humans, traded it for high-quality magic crystals from demons, then sold those crystals to human nobles at huge markups. Their 30% price hike was calculated. They knew the holy war was coming and the demons would need to stockpile food. Squeeze them while they're desperate. The last detail made me laugh. Their leader planned to use the wealth squeezed from demons to fund the hero Gareth's team, in exchange for a noble title in human society. Eating demon food while sharpening the knife meant for demon throats. Cecilia questioned my breeding plans. She didn't understand how mixing plants could create better ones. So I explained it simply. Humans mate with humans, human children. Elves with elves, elf children. What happens when a human mates with an elf? A half-elf, she said. Exactly. And half-elves get the best of both. Long lifespan from elves, adaptability from humans. If that works for people, why not plants? I watched her scroll slip from her fingers as it clicked. Remember this, I told her. It's called genetics. The next morning, someone knocked on my door. It was Ashlia in a formal black robe, horns polished clean, eyes still a little sleepy. She invited me to breakfast and told me the merchant representative would arrive soon. Then she handed me a dark mask. She explained that I needed to hide my human identity. I was too important to the demons now. If those merchants discovered a powerless human was secretly advising the demon race and threatening their profits, they might send assassins after me. She was right. Cutting off someone's money is like killing their parents. I put the mask on. After breakfast, we waited in the meeting hall. Ashlia sat on the throne reviewing documents, though I caught her glancing at me a few times. The mask apparently gave me some kind of mysterious look. I didn't notice. I was reading Cecilia's latest intelligence. The merchant representative was named Nick, a young half-fox, half-human, the youngest son of the caravan leader. He was sent here as a scapegoat. The higher-ups figured the demons would be furious, so they sent someone expendable to absorb the anger. When Nick walked in, I studied him carefully. Fox ears, fluffy tail, neat clothes, and a face that said he'd already accepted whatever happened to him. He knew he was disposable. He bowed to Ashlia and mechanically repeated the merchant's demands. Higher prices, take it or leave it. Ashlia, strengthened by Caesar's diary and my greenhouse plans, refused firmly. She tore apart every excuse, exposed every greedy calculation. Meanwhile, I noticed Nick wasn't really listening to the lecture. He was studying me. I could tell he was confused. The Demon King and Mephist radiated massive magical power, but I had none at all. He probably thought I was some hidden master whose strength was too terrifying to detect. When it was his turn to respond, Nick was smooth. Poor harvest, monster attacks, rising costs. He dressed up greed as necessity and delivered it perfectly. I'd planned to destroy him with Cecilia's intelligence, expose every dirty secret, and crush him. But watching him, I changed my mind. This was a smart, talented person being used as a throwaway piece by people who didn't appreciate him. That resentment in his eyes, I recognized it. A darker, bolder idea formed in my head. Why fight foreign traders when I could swallow the whole caravan and make it ours? A merchant team that belongs to the demons, that's the real prize. So instead of attacking, I started clapping. Well said. Makes a lot of sense. Your price hike seems completely justified. The room went silent. Mephist narrowed his eyes. Ashlia's shock was visible even through her veil. Under the table, her small boot slammed into my calf. Hard. I grabbed her ankle and pinched the top of her foot to signal her to stop. She flinched and pulled back. Nick was stunned. He'd expected to be torn apart, not agreed with. So, the negotiations are over, he asked, completely confused. Of course, I said. But since you've come all this way, stay for a meal. Consider it a celebration of our happy cooperation. Nick couldn't find a reason to refuse. He had no idea what was coming next. After the meeting, Mephist took Nick out to tour the castle corridors, leaving me alone with Ashlia. The moment they were gone, she ripped off her veil and puffed up her cheeks like an angry pufferfish. She didn't say a word, but her eyes screamed, "Explain yourself." I told her I wasn't giving in. I had a better idea. That fox kid Nick was smart, quick, and hungry to prove himself. His own family treated him like garbage. Sooner or later, he'd fight his greedy brothers for control of the caravan. So why not help him win? Support him in secret, drain the caravan from inside, and take the whole thing over. Instead of fighting foreign traders forever, the demons would own their own merchant team, one that was loyal and fully under our control. Ashlia thought about it. She liked the long-term thinking, but she worried. Nick was still a merchant. What if he betrayed us later for a better deal? I took her hand and looked her in the eyes. Trust me. She was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Okay, I trust you with all of this. I went straight to the kitchen. If I was going to win over a future business partner, I needed more than words. I needed a real meal. I found some rare monster ham in storage. I sliced it thin, cooked it slow, seasoned it with what little spice was left. The smell filled the whole kitchen. At lunch, Mephist brought Nick to the dining hall. The table was set with hot food, still mostly roots and vegetables, but the ham made it special. Mephist excused himself, claiming urgent business. Left me alone with Nick. That was the plan. Nick sat across from me. He was curious about the masked stranger with no detectable magic who sat as an equal to the Demon King. I could see him studying me. I told him to eat. He cut a piece of the ham, chewed it, and his eyes widened. He'd expected demon food to be rough and terrible. Instead, the flavors were balanced and carefully prepared. Incredible, he said. Even among demons, there are those who enjoy life. I sighed and said it was a shame. With only these simple ingredients, I could only do so much. With better, more diverse ingredients, I could make dishes that would drive the continent crazy. His fox ears twitched. He understood we weren't really talking about food anymore. He played along perfectly. He said the ingredients didn't matter as much as the chef. He'd seen plenty of fools in his caravan who wasted good materials because they had no real skill. A great chef who understood heat and timing, that was what mattered. I leaned forward and asked where someone might find such an excellent chef. Nick didn't blink. He said he knew one. A talented cook with a difficult temper, pushed aside by mediocre people, whose real abilities nobody had ever seen. I laughed. Really laughed. Good wine needs no bush, I told him. If someone has real skill, their talent will shine. I pointed at his plate. Eat. Don't waste food. Something shifted in him. The polished, careful merchant act dropped away. He grabbed the meat with his hands and ate like a starving man, like he was swallowing 20 years of being overlooked and treated as nothing. As the meal wound down, I asked him casually, suppose the Demon King wanted to hire that talented chef as the exclusive royal chef for the demon realm. Would he agree? Nick wiped his greasy mouth with a napkin. Of course he would. Becoming the Demon King's chef and preparing the greatest feast for the demons. That would be the honor of his life. We looked at each other across the table. Then we both burst out laughing. After lunch, I told Nick I'd show him around the castle. He was eager. He knew I was about to reveal something big. I took him to the grand library first. Mephist was waiting. He raised his hand, and the massive carved doors rumbled open. Nick froze the moment he stepped inside. Towering circular bookshelves stretched dozens of meters high, with floating magic orbs lighting thousands of books. In the human empire, even a damaged fireball scroll cost a fortune on the black market. Here, magical knowledge was stacked on shelves like ordinary junk. I pulled out a dusty old book and tossed it into his arms. A complete guide to monster habits and taming arrays, detailed weaknesses, diets, and full diagrams for building spirit-taming formations. Nick's hands were shaking. With this knowledge, a caravan could solve its biggest problem, monster attacks during transport. They could even tame wind beasts to pull carts, multiplying their speed tenfold. His face turned red. He was about to beg for it. I raised a finger to my lips. Don't get too excited. I'm not the owner of this library. Borrowing depends on whether you can show the Lord of all things proper sincerity. He understood immediately. I watched the struggle in his eyes, greed, ambition, calculation, until it all hardened into resolve. He closed the book carefully and put it back on the shelf. In that moment, I knew his loyalty had shifted. His father's plan to squeeze demons for an extra 3% on grain suddenly looked pathetically small compared to what this library alone was worth. Next, I took him to the greenhouse outside the city. He stared through the dome at healthy green bean seedlings growing in demon soil. His jaw dropped. Normal plants, growing on cursed land. He understood what it meant. The demons were about to solve their food problem. His father's leverage was vanishing. Then I showed him the gathering formation outside, pulling magic from the air and condensing cheap low-grade crystals. I explained the business opportunity. Human nobles hoarded high-grade crystals, but most low-level mages and apprentices couldn't afford them. A flood of cheap, low-grade crystals targeting the bottom of the market would be a gold mine. I told him the demons could supply him with as many as he wanted. In return, I needed one thing: seeds. Good crop seeds. Cold-resistant wheat, high-yield rice, drought-tolerant vegetables. As many as he could get. Our first deal, I said. He agreed instantly. Then his merchant brain kicked in, and he surprised me. Sir, if you have greenhouses and crops and that monster-taming book, why not raise monsters? He explained that human knights needed monster meat for training, but wild monsters were dangerous and expensive to hunt. If demons could farm low-level monsters using greenhouse-grown feed, that would open a massive, untapped market across the entire continent. Monster farming. I hadn't even thought of that. This kid was a natural. I'd made the right choice. Nick left carrying our secret agreement and the cover story of a 30% price increase. Mephist saw him off with proper respect. Our future partner disappeared into the wasteland. I took off my mask. Ashlia appeared beside me. I hadn't even noticed her approach. She'd changed into a tight work outfit with her sleeves rolled up and her hair in a ponytail. "Everything settled?" she asked. The fish took the bait. "Now we wait for him to wrap the line around his own neck." She rolled her eyes at me. Apparently, thanks to my brilliant plans, the mighty Demon King now had to go work as a miner in the deep crystal mines to fill the gaps in our supply. She wasn't thrilled about it. Before she left, I stopped her with one more question. "In the demon realm, are there any magical creatures that eat little, grow fast, and reproduce a lot?" She thought carefully, then told me I should ask Balu, the giant-bellied demon lord. After rushing to the mine cave, Ashlia was busy, and Rain didn't sit still either. He turned around and headed straight to the Grand Library. Why didn't he go directly to ask the giant-bellied demon Lord Baru about ingredients? The reason was simple. As a human, Rain didn't know where that demon lord usually went to eat. Under the dim candlelight, Rain sat among a pile of books, using a charcoal pen to cross out names on parchment one by one. Flame pig. No, this thing, when hungry, can spit fire. Its farm made of wood would burn down in minutes. Rock-armored cow. Also no, it takes too long to grow. By the time it has enough meat, the season has changed. Acid liquid rabbit. What? Its waste contains strong acid? Who would dare to clean up after it? Rain irritably scratched his messy hair. Through research, he found several low-level magical creatures that seemed suitable for domestication, but each had fatal flaws. Creatures from another world hadn't been domesticated by humans over long years, so finding a perfect livestock that eats little, grows fast, and has lots of meat was like searching for a needle in a haystack. It seems I can't do this alone. I really need to ask that knowledgeable old fat guy. Time passed unknowingly, and the sky outside was completely dark. The cold winter wind seeped through the cracks in the library windows, making Rain shiver in his thin clothes. At that moment, Rain's shadow rippled. "Still messing with these useless papers late at night. Great sage, your energy is really impressive." Along with a fragrant aroma, Cecilia gracefully stepped out of the shadows. Today, she had just returned from gathering intelligence in the human empire and planned to report the latest news about the hero to Demon King Ashlia. I searched throughout the Demon King's castle but couldn't sense Ashlia's presence. Since I had nothing to do, Cecilia noticed that the library lights were still on, so she decided to come and see the wise person who always creates miracles. Cecilia walked behind Ryan, looked at his thin clothes, and raised her eyebrows. She casually took out a warm magical beast wool blanket and gently draped it over Ryan's shoulders. "Take care of yourself, you little crazy one." Cecilia leaned lazily against the desk, her lips slightly curved. "You're now the hope of our demon race. If you catch a cold and die from a cold wind, it would be quite a joke." Feeling the warmth on her shoulders, Ryan felt a warm feeling inside. He then pulled the edge of the blanket and wrapped himself a little tighter. "Thanks, Sister Assassin. Coming all this way late at night? Is there something you need?" "Nothing urgent. Just couldn't find the king," Cecilia said casually, playing with the candle flame on the table. "Want to hear some gossip?" Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Sure, tell me." Cecilia covered her mouth and chuckled. "The hero is now in a bit of a mess. According to the divine oracle from the church, he's on a journey to find his next destined teammate. From my intel network, that teammate seems to be an elf girl archer." "Elf? I heard those long-eared folks are quite proud, usually hiding in forests and not even showing respect to human kings." Ryan stroked his chin. "Exactly. So, the hero's journey isn't going to be smooth. The elves have set many tests, and the hero has suffered quite a bit outside the forest these days." Cecilia paused, her tone surprisingly filled with some pity. "But the most pitiful is the little mage Iris who's with the hero. The hero, to keep up his noble image, leaves all the dirty work, camping and cooking, to that young girl. The poor girl has been so exhausted these past days that she can barely lift her staff." Ryan's eyes darkened briefly but quickly returned to calm. "Difficult journey? That's good," Ryan said indifferently. "The more obstacles they face in finding teammates, the more time the demon race can spend developing and farming." However, at this point, Ryan suddenly had an idea. "Since your intelligence network knows exactly what they do every day, why don't we take advantage of the fact that the hero isn't fully grown yet and hasn't gathered his team? Why not send a few top assassins like you to take him out directly? Killing the danger before it grows. Isn't that basic common sense? Hearing this simple and blunt question, Cecilia paused her finger as she played with the candle flame. Do you think the former Demon King didn't do this before? Cecilia straightened up and said, over the past thousands of years, the demon race has tried countless times to assassinate the hero when he was weak. Poison, stabbing, even sacrificial self-destruction by powerful demons. And what happened? Ryan frowned. The result was, they couldn't kill him at all, because before the hero fully matures and gains the power to defeat the Demon King, he is protected by the High Goddess, every time, just as a deadly attack is about to land. Either a meteor hits the assassin, or a divine artifact suddenly unleashes an unbreakable holy barrier, or a spatial turbulence teleports the hero away. That's the fundamental rule of this world. Before the final showdown in the story, we villains can only cause minor trouble for the hero and can't end his life. Ryan shook his head in frustration. Immortality with a curse and immunity to plot twists. Those gods really take bias to the extreme, Ryan muttered quietly, then pushed the thought aside. Forget it, I don't care about that cheater with the cheat device. Ryan stood up, tidied his clothes, and asked, Assassin's sister, do you know where the giant belly demon Lord Baru's territory is? Baru? Cecilia looked a bit annoyed. Of course I know. But why are you looking for that fat, ugly old guy in the middle of the night? Ryan grinned. Of course, it's for the future of the demon race. Growing crops in a big shed only feeds us. I need to talk to him about how to get some meat for the demon race. Cecilia naturally stepped forward and took hold of Ryan's arm. Hold on tight. Shadow travel isn't very comfortable. With a dizzying sense of weightlessness, the two of them entered the deep darkness together. When Ryan's vision cleared, he found himself in a very wide valley basin. This is the territory of the giant-bellied demon lord, Baru. As soon as he landed, Ryan felt very different. He had expected the demon lord's territory to be dark and gloomy at night, full of deathly silence. But surprisingly, the basin was brightly lit and bustling with noise. In the center of the valley, several large bonfires burned. The warm flames chased away the cold winter wind of the demon world. Hundreds of demon civilians gathered around the fires, holding a simple but lively festival. At the very center of the crowd, on a large altar made of big stones, the giant-bellied demon Lord Baru sat cross-legged without any airs. His chubby face was full of a kind and gentle smile, like a giant Santa Claus from another world. At his feet, there were several large sacks filled with candies made from sweet bark and sugar. Line up, line up. Everyone gets a turn today, Baru's voice echoed through the night sky. He reached out his big hand to hand out candies to the demon children who came forward in line. The ragged children took the candies, their faces shining with pure, bright smiles. Thank you, Lord Baru. Thanks to the demon lord. Ryan quietly watched this warm scene from the shadows afar. Just then, Baru, sitting on the altar, sensed something. He lifted his head and, his gaze passing over the crowd, fixed on Ryan, who was brought over by Cecilia. Old Baru's eyes lit up. He even forgot about handing out candies, trembling with excitement, his fat body shaking. He stood up from the altar and strode toward Ryan. Ha! Look who's here. It's our demon race's miracle, the great sage. Baru's hearty laughter drowned out the crackling of the bonfire. He enthusiastically put his arm around Ryan's shoulder and, without hesitation, led him toward the warmest part of the bonfire. Old Baru, in the middle of the night. What are you celebrating? Ryan asked, slightly struggling to peek out from Baru's armpit. Baru pointed at the children around him, who finally managed to smile in the cold wind. What's there to celebrate? Of course, it's because we finally have food. For the first time in decades, these children have felt the joy of a full stomach before winter. All thanks to you, wise one. Tonight's bonfire is made just for you. The bonfire crackled in the middle of the valley, its orange glow tearing a warm hole in the dark night sky. Reen stood quietly at the edge of shadow and light, watching the children holding hands and clumsily dancing in a circle beside the fire. They wore patched old clothes, and their faces looked a bit thin from years of poor nutrition. But right now, their dusty faces were lit up with the most innocent, carefree smiles Reen had ever seen. Ha ha ha, you can't catch me. Hand over the candies. Their bright voices and carefree laughter echoed in the night breeze. Seeing this, Reen suddenly felt as if a soft hand gently squeezed his heart. A strange but deeply nostalgic feeling rose unexpectedly from within him. That was happiness, pure happiness, free of any impurities. Since growing up on Earth and becoming an adult, he had been thrown into the grinding machine called society. Since crossing into this strange, cursed world, crawling through mud and horse dung for half a loaf of black bread. Reen couldn't remember how long it had been since he last felt this way. He had long gotten used to hiding behind coldness, greed, and profit. But now, watching those children dance happily because they had eaten enough, Reen found his lips curling into a high smile without realizing it. He was very greedy. Reen closed his eyes, took a deep breath of air sweet with candy, and savored this long-lost thrill deep in his heart. He wished he could keep this moment of peace forever in his mind. Hey, here. Baru stepped closer and handed Reen a rough, amber-colored piece of hard candy about the size of his palm. Is this candy? Yes, it's coarse sugar made from sweet tree bark. Baru smiled and said, thanks to the greenhouse you built, and also thanks to Lord Demon King. Baru watched the dancing tribespeople with a tone full of emotion and respect. Great sage, Lady Ashleia was inspired by you and spent the whole night transforming high-level magic into basic magic energy segments. This means that just a few ordinary demon civilians standing together can piece their magic power in order and inject it into a magic circle, allowing them to cast a simple growth spell together. Breaking down advanced magic into a simple, easy-to-use process for ordinary people? Is this something that the often moody little demon king could do? Now, we not only have enough food, but also extra plants to make sugar. Baru patted Ryan on the shoulder. Ryan felt a warm feeling rise inside as he held the coarse sugar. He turned to Baru, who was about to steer the conversation back on track. By the way, old Baru, I actually came to see you tonight to discuss something about magical beasts. Everyone quiet down. Before Ryan could finish, Baru suddenly raised his loud voice like a bell. The lively bonfire party quickly quieted, and all the demon eyes turned to old Baru. Baru grabbed Ryan's arm and pulled him from the shadows to stand beside the bright bonfire. My tribespeople, open your eyes and see clearly. Old Baru proudly patted Ryan's back and loudly announced to everyone. Standing before you is our demon tribe's wise one, the great sage who broke the curse of hunger that lasted for hundreds of years. Today's food in your stomachs and the sugar in your children's mouths are all thanks to his miracle. The crowd erupted in cheers. Soon after, the demon elders began to step forward voluntarily. Those strong demons, 2 meters tall with horns or scales, showed great restraint in front of Ryan, a thin human. They approached Ryan, bowed deeply, and expressed their thanks in a stiff but sincere tone. Ryan looked into their eyes. In those vertical pupils or dark red eyes, he saw a passionate hope for a better future and endless gratitude toward him. But at the same time, he noticed their bodies tense slightly, a sign of their natural instinct to be cautious and a little afraid of humans. After all, for thousands of years, humans had only brought chaos, trials, and long periods of hunger and blockade to the demon race. Baru saw the unconscious distance the others kept, and a look of embarrassment and awkwardness appeared on his face. He was about to speak and scold them, but Ryan waved his hand to stop him. Ryan didn't care. A deep chill doesn't happen overnight. He didn't need fake hugs. Ryan knew well that trust isn't built with just a few nice words. In the future, his actions would naturally break down all barriers. After the adults stepped back, the quiet was broken by the noisy footsteps. Brother Sage. Thank you, big brother. Unlike the formal attitude of the adults, the demon children didn't care about human or demon or any race hatred. To them, whoever gave them candy, fed them well, was the best person in the world. A group of children, with fluffy ears, tiny horns, or little tails, chattered excitedly and quickly surrounded Ryan, leaving no space. Big brother, this is for you. I found this shiny glowing stone by the river. Sage, this is a little bug I made from dry grass. This is half of a candy I ate. It's very sweet, for you. The children eagerly stood on tiptoe, stuffing what they thought were their most precious treasures into Ryan's arms. In just a moment, Ryan's arms were filled with strange-shaped stones, twigs, grass toys, and even a warm, half-melted piece of coarse sugar sticky with saliva. Hey, slow down. I can't hold all this. Faced with this group of extremely enthusiastic little troublemakers, Ryan was completely overwhelmed. He hugged his treasures, awkwardly turned around, and asked Baru for help. Come on, control your little ones. Old Baru smiled and stepped forward, waving his sturdy arm to gently push the children back a little, like herding ducklings. All right, little ones. The great sage can't carry so many treasures. Baru winked at the children and said, Don't you know? The best gift for the great sage isn't these. A little girl with tiny horns on her head curiously asked. Baru lowered his head, pretending to be mysterious, and whispered, Of course. It's to play an endless game of tag with him. Ryan was slightly surprised upon hearing this, but when he saw the bright eyes of the children, he couldn't help but chuckle softly. Okay. Ryan carefully set aside the small gifts he was holding, then rolled up his sleeves confidently and took on a fierce look as he charged toward the children. Whoever I catch first gets tomorrow's candies. Roar ah! Run! The children cheered and screamed, scattering like a flock of birds. Ryan laughed loudly, ignoring his image, and chased after the group of demon children around the campfire area. Watching Ryan run freely among the kids, Cecilia, standing in the shadows, quietly approached Baru. Really unbelievable. Cecilia looked at Ryan playing with the children and teased, That guy is smarter than Mephistopheles. Yet right now, he looks like a fool. And you, old Baru. She turned to look at the big, bulky figure of Baru, sizing him up. I've never understood. You're fat and ugly. Eat like a wild beast. So why do all the children in the demon race love to be close to you? Hearing the teasing from this enchanting demon lord, Baru didn't get angry. His eyes reflected the flickering firelight, and his chubby face showed a gentle, wise expression. The secret is quite simple, Cecilia. Baru looked at the smiling faces in the distance and softly said, As long as you keep a child's heart, keeping a child's heart. These 4 words, spoken by a ruthless demon lord, sounded absurd yet powerful. Cecilia paused slightly. After a moment, a genuine smile appeared on her face. What a hopeless bunch of lunatics, Cecilia whispered softly, then gracefully stepped into the dance circle near the campfire, dancing lightly to the rough rhythm. Watching everyone fully immersed in the moment, Baru smiled kindly. He turned around, picked up a few thick logs, and threw them into the central fire pit in the valley. Boom! With the cracking sound of dry wood, the orange-red bonfire shot up high. The hot flames soared into the sky, dispelling all the cold of the winter night and illuminating the magical world sky like daylight, full of hope. After a night of celebration, Ryan had the most restful sleep since crossing over. The next morning, as the warm early winter sunlight streamed through the window, Ryan slowly opened his eyes on a soft beast-hide bed. He stretched lazily, recalling the fire and laughter from last night, a relaxed smile still on his face. He sat up and looked around. This was a very neat and simple stone house. The corners of the walls had no gaps between stones, smooth as one piece. Clearly, this was not built by human hands, but was a stone house created with magic by the demon race. Ryan smiled, turned over, and pushed open the wooden door of the house. Fresh, cold air hit his face. Before he could even yawn comfortably, a small dark shadow precisely bumped into his chest. Great Sage Big Brother. Good morning. Looking down, it was the little demon girl with small goat horns. She lifted her chubby face, holding her hands high like a treasure. In her hands was a stick about 1 meter long. Big Brother, I give this to you. The girl excitedly waved the stick, her eyes shining. This is the straightest stick I found at the edge of the forest. It's my most precious treasure. I take it everywhere I go. It has kept me company through many dark nights. Now, I want to give it to you. Ryan lowered his head, focusing on the stick. It was a gray-brown stick, shiny from the girl's sweaty hands. Surprisingly, it had no extra branches or bumps, with smooth lines and perfect straightness, as if carved by a lathe, completely unlike a naturally grown branch. Perfect length, great grip, and this flawless straightness. This is simply an extraordinary sword. If this thing had been around during his time on Earth, just one stick in hand would have completely destroyed the nearby 2 acres of rapeseed fields and tall wild grasses. Even the village's yellow dog would have to get hit twice before leaving. No man can resist a straight, sturdy branch. Ryan reached out with both hands and took the rare treasure from the little girl's hands. He felt the weight of the stick and gently patted the little girl's horned head. This gift, I like it very much. Thank you. This is definitely the best weapon I've ever received. Hearing the wise man's praise, the little girl giggled happily, then turned around happily and ran to play with her friends. Ryan stood still, watching the girl leave. He looked down at the stick in his hand. Suddenly, swish, swish, swish. Ryan swung the stick in the air, making childish sword movements, and made whooshing sounds like sword energy. After performing a smooth, elegant sword dance, he casually put away the stick and carefully tied it to his belt. Cecilia, standing in the shadow nearby, watched Ryan's childish actions with her eyes. She leaned against the stone wall, looking at the man proud of his branch, and a charming smile appeared on her lips. But as she smiled, a hint of jealousy secretly grew in her eyes, something she didn't even realize herself. She was jealous that the little girl could give her kindness so freely, and she was jealous that Ryan could show such pure happiness just because of a broken branch. That was a kind of light she, who had spent her life wandering through blood, lies, and assassination, could never reach. Great sage, did you sleep well last night? Old Baru's voice interrupted the peaceful morning from afar. He carried a big bowl of steaming meat soup and strode over. Last night was wonderful. Ryan patted the stick at his waist and smiled as he greeted him. Old Baru, seeing those children's smiles is the greatest satisfaction I've had since coming to this cursed world. Baru's face lit up with a simple, honest smile. Let's go. After breakfast, I'll take you around my territory. I want you to see our determination to fight for our demon race. After a simple breakfast, Ryan followed Baru and began wandering in the valley basin. In this dark red wilderness, a dozen glowing magic greenhouses rose from the ground. Inside one greenhouse, 5 strong adult demon warriors were sweating heavily, forming a circle. They held hands, closed their eyes, and struggled to chant dry spells. Their magic gathered through the magic circle beneath their feet, forming a faint but pure green light that seeped into the soil. It's working. It's sprouting. A tender green sprout broke through the dirt, stretching its delicate leaves. The 5 adult demon warriors suddenly collapsed to the ground, exhausted as if their life force had been drained. They gasped heavily, soaked in sweat. Using their magic to grow plants was much harder than fighting, even 100 times more tiring. But when they looked up and saw the healthy green crops, their tired eyes showed no complaints, only hope shining through. Not only the adults. Outside the greenhouse, the children were busy too. Some carried small buckets to fetch water. Others carefully picked out stones from the soil. Everyone was doing what they could, making the whole territory look lively and full of life. These are truly amazing people, Ryan said sincerely. Of course, as long as there is hope, demons never lack the endurance to endure hardships. Baru proudly puffed out his chest, then turned to Ryan. By the way, great sage, you didn't finish your story last night at the bonfire. Why did you come to find me today? Ryan looked away. Old Baru, farming can only prevent starvation. But the warriors need training, and the children need to grow strong. Just eating plants isn't enough. I'm here to ask if there are any large-scale tame monsters in the demon world. The requirements are simple. They eat little, grow fast, and preferably breed a lot. Tame monsters. Baru stroked his chin and thought deeply. Suddenly, Baru slapped his thigh excitedly. Yes, there is indeed a creature that perfectly matches your needs. Baru gestured to Ryan and said, Magic Ant Beast. Have you heard of it, wise one? This creature is truly a treasure in itself. Magic Ant Beast? Ryan became interested. Exactly, old Baru swallowed and explained eagerly. This big insect is not picky at all. As long as there are enough plant scraps and rotting leaves, they can breed wildly, and their growth cycle is very short. Their ant eggs are a rare and nutritious food, full of high nutrients. The silk spun by the larvae is very strong, and with a little processing, it can be made into excellent fabric. When they mature into adults, their hard shells can be used as light armor for soldiers. Old Bauru paused here, unable to hide his excitement. The most important thing is, after peeling off the shell, inside is that white flesh. When roasted, It has a unique sweet and fresh flavor. Eggs can be high-protein food. Larvae can spin silk. Adults can wear armor. And the meat can be eaten? That's it. Ryan clapped his hands, then asked, "Such a perfect creature, why didn't you catch and raise them before?" Hearing this question, a bit of excitement faded from old Baoru's face. He spread his hands. "Wise one, magic ant beasts are typical social creatures. Ordinary worker and soldier ants have no intelligence and will attack anything that approaches. The only way to domesticate them is to go deep into their underground nests and use high-level mental contracts to forcibly tame the large, mentally powerful queen ant. In the confined underground nest, you not only face thousands of brave soldier ants willing to die, but also must withstand the queen's mental shock. For ordinary demons, this is simply impossible." Hearing about these extremely dangerous taming conditions, Ryan's brow furrowed slightly. It was like going into a hellish dungeon to fight a boss. However, old Baoru changed the subject. "Ordinary demons really can't do it." Baoru turned his head, looked at Ryan, and raised an eyebrow. "But if the demon lord himself, who is already bored, personally goes to catch a bug, then things are a whole different story." The ripples of darkness tore through the sky over the wilderness. Accompanied by a feeling of space distortion, 3 figures were forcefully thrown onto a barren land covered with gravel. "Ugh! Cough, cough! Damn it! Old Baru, how much do you usually eat?" As soon as Cecilia landed, she supported herself with her hands on her knees, gasping for breath. Her eyes looked at old Baru as if she wanted to carve 2 holes into his fat flesh. "You really should think about losing some weight." "Ha ha! Don't be mad, Cecilia," old Baru said with a simple, innocent smile. "Eating a lot is a blessing. Besides, my fat is the best winter insulation fur." Nearby, Ryan, still dizzy, shook his head helplessly at their bickering. He stood up and looked around. This was a desolate desert, with only scattered stones and a few dead thorns around. Everything was quiet. Ryan turned in a circle and then looked at old Baru with confusion. "Old Baru, didn't you say you'd take me to find the magic ant beast? It's all bare here, not even a bug hole. Where are those big bugs?" Old Baru pointed to a small, bare hill not far ahead of the 3. "Far away, yet right in front of you, great sage. That's the nest of the magic ant beast." "Where exactly?" Ryan followed his finger, trying to find an entrance like an ant hole at the foot of the hill. "Stop looking for a hole," old Baru pointed again. "What I mean is, this small hill you see is the nest of the magic ant beast." "Huh?" Ryan looked up carefully at the hill over 100 meters tall. Could it really be that this hill was built up over years of the magic ant beast's breeding and digging, with countless dirt, secretions, and broken stones piled together to form an ant hill? Wow. Ryan's scalp tingled. This huge group? The magic ant beast in this hill must number at least a few million, if not more than 10 million. Old Burr nodded. Probably more, even. "What do they eat?" Ryan asked with a serious voice. "Millions of mouths. Just a group of bugs consuming organic matter daily would be an astronomical amount. This desert has not a single blade of grass. How do they sustain such a large ecosystem?" Old Balu was stumped. He scratched his bald head and hesitantly said, Maybe they grow their own food underground. God, no. Bugs don't farm." Rain rolled his eyes, but he understood that inside such a large swarm, there must be a strict and extraordinary survival logic. Rain stroked his chin and carefully looked at this special small mountain. Millions of demon ants, combined with this fortress-like structure, must be filled with complex mazes and ventilation tunnels inside. If the regular army of the human empire came to attack, normal fire attacks, flooding, or poison smoke would probably not reach the deepest parts of the nest. This makes it a nearly perfect war fortress in tactical terms. "That's a bit tricky," Rain frowned. "The queen ant must be hiding deep underground in the most secure part. How can we get through the defenses of millions of soldier ants and bring out the queen without any damage?" "That's not hard," old Balu interrupted. "I'm tough and thick-skinned. The soldier ant's pincers can't even scratch me. I can just walk in, go all the way underground, and grab that big bug." "Isn't that simple?" Cecilia played with her long hair hanging over her chest. "Or even easier. As long as you can pinpoint the exact location of the queen, I can use shadow magic to teleport behind her, knock her out, and bring her out." Without even a second's delay, Rain opened his mouth, but the tactics of distraction, deception, and poisoning he had in mind got stuck in his throat. Yes, he was thinking with a normal person's mindset. He forgot that the two people beside him were among the strongest fighters on the entire continent. In the face of absolute strength, all tactics and perfect fortresses are just paper tigers that can be easily broken. But then he thought, if this world wasn't full of destructive magic, and if demon ants and beasts hadn't just appeared in the demon territory where demon lords gather, with such terrifying size and reproduction ability, they might have already taken over half the world, he thought. Just as Rain was lost in these thoughts about the world's strange nature. Click, click. In the next moment, a creature about the size of a teenager crawled out from the shadows, appearing in front of the three people without warning. Is this an ant? This magical ant beast has 4 segmented limbs, with 2 small and 2 large. Its front limbs are sickle-shaped claws, its head is broad with cloudy compound eyes, and its large mandibles are exposed with saw-like teeth. Its body is light brown with a hard outer shell, and dark red lines are visible at the joints. This thing looks like a creature from a sci-fi movie. Even though Ryan is standing next to 2 magic masters, facing such a creature still makes him gasp with fear. However, this fierce-looking ant beast did not attack. It quietly stayed about 10 steps away from the 3, making a strange rhythmic sound through its body, as if trying to send a message. Then, something happened that completely shattered Ryan's understanding. Old Balu, standing beside him, cleared his throat and made a series of strange gurgling and clicking sounds toward the ant beast. The ant beast paused for a moment and then responded. Old Balu nodded and let out a long hissing sound. 1 person and 1 insect, and they were talking openly right in front of Ryan. Wow. Ryan pointed at Old Balu in shock. You can speak a foreign language? Nothing surprising, Cecilia explained nearby. Old Balu's gluttony talent allows him to understand most of the habits of the monsters he eats. This fat old guy probably used to sneak food all the time. Old Balu turned around, a little embarrassed, rubbing his hands but not denying Cecilia's words. Ahem, great sage. The ant beast just brought us a message. Old Balu's expression turned strange as he pointed to the nest in front of him, the queen down there. She sensed our arrival, Ryan and Cecilia's power. And then, is she planning to gather her swarm to fight us? Ryan asked. No. Old Balu shook his head. She said she's very afraid and doesn't want to fight us. To show her sincerity and friendliness, she politely invited us to sit inside her nest. Following the guide insect, the 3 of them stepped into this incredible underground maze. It was a strange and colorful journey. As they entered the underground passage, the path ahead was buried under tangled rocks and loose dirt. However, the guide insect made a clicking sound, and suddenly, hundreds of soldier and worker ants appeared in the darkness. They moved like precise machines, working efficiently. In just a few seconds, they chewed, carried, and cleared a wide, flat path. Every 10 steps, a special insect with a glowing blue belly hung upside down from the ceiling. As the 3 moved deeper, these glowing insects lit up one after another, illuminating the dark underground world clearly. Incredible, Cecilia whispered, looking at the glowing lights above and the smooth path below. Old Balu also widened his eyes. As a demon lord who often ate magic ant beasts as snacks, he had never imagined that these bugs, known only for killing and reproducing, could have such terrifying organization and discipline. Led by the guide insect, they passed through the core areas of the insect society. Ryan saw the insect's farming zone. Countless hard-working worker ants were digging deep into the earth to find poor-quality magic crystals, then neatly stacking these minerals near strange fungi roots that emitted a faint glow. These fungi grew by absorbing the tiny amounts of magic power released from the crystals. Although this energy conversion was very inefficient, under the careful care of the insects, large forests of fungi still became the foundation supporting millions of mouths. Next, they passed through dense nursery rooms and special weaving chambers. Ryan noticed that these bugs spun silk not just to wrap their eggs. They also used tough, soft silk to line the inside of their nests, making the whole home more comfortable and better at retaining heat. Every facility and task showed the wisdom of the insect society. After walking for a long time, the guide insect finally stopped. In front of them was a huge nest made entirely of soft, white silk. The guide insect turned around, made a low hissing sound at Balu, then respectfully backed away and left. "We have arrived." Old Balu lowered his voice. "It says this is the queen of the insect race's bedroom." The three of them lifted the soft curtain made of silk and stepped into the clean, white bedroom. The first thing that caught their eyes was a strange creature with a slender body and a shell that looked like semi-transparent jade. It had a smooth, noble appearance, like a piece of fine craftsmanship. This must be the queen of the insect race. Around the queen, there were about a dozen small insects with long antennae. They gently used their specialized front limbs to clean the queen's shell. The three of them quietly observed the queen, who was also watching the visitors carefully. Suddenly, a strange sound like high-pitched friction of a hard object filled the room. "3. Guest from the magic race. Why? Have you come? Is this a sound made by an insect?" After a moment of shock, Ryan forced himself to stay calm and spoke clearly. "We come for cooperation." "Cooperation?" The queen's voice showed confusion and impatience. "Powerful magic race. Cooperating with the insect race. The magic race sent 2 magic lords here for cooperation? This might be a form of forced servitude, right?" Ryan quickly sensed the queen's unease. With intelligent creatures, any forceful pressure could lead to irreversible damage. "Please lower your guard, Your Majesty." Ryan stepped forward, blocking the 2 magic lords, and spoke sincerely. He explained the current large-scale farming plan in the Demon King's city, detailing how the magic race needed the useless shells of magic ants, extra insect eggs, and strong silk. In exchange, the magic race would provide endless high-quality fertilizer and leftover crops, freeing the insect race from inefficient mushroom cultivation with magic crystals. Listening to Ryan's vision of mutual benefit, the queen of the insect race agreed. She certainly supported Ryan's win-win proposal, but more practically, the 2 magic lords were standing right in her bedroom, so she had no right to refuse. "I agree to your cooperation." The insect queen rubbed her shell, then looked at old Balu. "In fact, I also tried before to send messengers to seek an alliance with this mighty magic lord." Old Balu's face turned red with embarrassment as he scratched his bald head. "You sent a messenger? When?" "I only remember a few years ago some crab-like bugs entered my territory. Well, because they looked so tasty, I just roasted them without thinking." "It's okay. That's in the past." The queen didn't pursue the matter. She turned her gaze and made complex clicking sounds toward the small insect soldiers beside her. Several guard bugs immediately turned and crawled toward the nursery at the back of the bedroom. Ryan looked a bit confused. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" "Honored guest, I am very happy to have reached this great cooperation with the demon race." The queen's voice grew low and tired. "But, I'm sorry, the one truly walking with you into the future won't be me." Ryan was even more puzzled. "Not you? Then who?" "Sir, when you came in, did you see this hive? Isn't it very large? Very prosperous?" The 3 nodded. A subterranean society made up of millions of bugs was truly a miracle in the history of life. The insect race is a very amazing species, but at the same time, also a very sad one. The queen slightly lifted her head, as if recalling her long life. "This hive I built step by step, but soon, it will disappear completely because of my departure." The queen began to speak to the 3. "Every insect queen has the potential to evolve continuously during her life. To live longer, I evolved by stripping away my egg-laying reproductive ability and gave it to lower-level reproductive bugs. This freed me from the heavy egg-laying device and extended my life. To better command the millions of my kind, I went through countless trials and errors, evolving a shell structure that can produce high-frequency vibrations to make sounds, allowing the hive to expand deeper underground. To help the colony survive on this barren wasteland, I desperately evolved my brain, gaining intelligence far beyond my peers. This is how I led my people to learn to grow fungi with magic crystals and build the society we have today. But I have reached the limit of my life." An indescribable sadness seeped through her ears. "The greatest sorrow of the insect race lies in this. We have unlimited potential for evolution, but we lack inheritance. We do not have your human writing or the epic stories of the elves. The wisdom, tactics, language, and emotions in my mind will completely decay with the death of this body. After I die, Without the control of the intelligent brain, this nest will revert to being a wild beast, similar to other insect monsters, only knowing killing and reproduction. At this point, the few guard insects that had gone and returned crawled back. They carefully offered a strange egg, white as snow, surrounded by a faint golden glow. The queen of the insect race gently touched the egg with her front limbs, then pushed it toward Ryan. Everything is fair. The queen looked at Ryan. The gods gave the insect race terrifying potential for unlimited evolution, but they also locked our limits with short lifespans and untransferable genes. But you are different. The demon race, perhaps, can carry my child and the future of the insect race toward a distant place I can never reach. Ryan solemnly reached out and took the egg. He felt the faint but resilient heartbeat inside the egg. Maybe in 5 years or 10 years, my life will end, and this thriving nest will fall silent. The insect queen slightly lowered her beautiful and noble body, making a request to the three in front of her. I hope the demon race can treat the insect race kindly. In the coming years, until my life comes to an end, the insect race will do everything they can to provide the demon race with shells, silk, and extra nutrient eggs. Ryan nodded. In exchange, the demon race will also bring endless food to the insect race. I promise. This is my responsibility, old Baru cheerfully assured. With me here, there's no problem. Hearing this promise, the insect queen finally relaxed. Thank you, powerful allies. The queen rubbed her shell, her voice growing weaker and more tired. The guiding insect will escort you out. Please forgive my rudeness. Now, I need more sleep than ever. A few small guard insects crawled forward, gently covering her shell. This great mother, who dedicated her life to her tribe, slowly closed her compound eyes and fell into sleep. Reen held the special insect egg close to his chest. Just as he was about to leave the nest, Reen stopped in his tracks. He turned around, facing the sleeping queen of the insect race, and bowed in a respectful greeting. Knowledge in our race will continue. This is the promise of the great sage. After leaving the nest, the three of them parted ways on the surface. The task of handing over supplies and food to the insect race naturally fell to old Baru, who was very good at eating. Reen needed to quickly take this precious egg back to the Demon King's city for safekeeping. Cecilia, standing nearby, also had to return to the human empire to keep an eye on the hero's actions. Hurry up, great sage. I hope this valuable little egg won't get lost in the shadows. Cecilia reached out and put her arm around Reen's shoulder. The shadows beneath her stirred, and with a familiar feeling of weightlessness and darkness, when Reen's vision cleared again, he was standing outside the wide gates of the Demon King's city. Phew, it feels so good to stand on solid ground, Reen sighed in relief. But in the next moment, the air around him suddenly felt much colder. Looking up, Reen saw a small figure standing in front of the city gates. Ashley. She was standing expressionlessly in the cold wind. Her gaze was fixed on Reen and Cecilia, who had just stepped out of the shadows, with a look that seemed as if she was about to send 2 prisoners to the gallows. Reen's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly realized that, as an ordinary person with no magic power, he had disappeared for a whole day and night without any warning. If something had happened to him outside, Cecilia, standing beside Reen, was already sweating profusely. Oh, I just remembered. There's urgent information waiting for me at the human capital. Cecilia awkwardly shifted her gaze and prepared to slip away quickly. Your Majesty, I have safely delivered the great sage. I will go to work now. For the sake of the demon race, I will do my best. Stop right there. Cecilia froze in place, and Ashley looked at her coldly. Any unreported information should be reported to my study tonight. Cecilia's face fell. Understood, my king. Cecilia showed a grim smile that was even worse than crying. But recalling last night's pure fire dance, she could only comfort herself internally that she enjoyed such a night of celebration, which was worth it. Cecilia transformed into a shadow and sadly left, leaving only Ryan facing the angry wrath of the Demon King at the door. Cough. Your Majesty, please look. Facing the young Demon King about to erupt, Ryan held the insect egg high in front of him. This is a keepsake from the Queen of Ant Beasts. It is the core of our future plans to build textile factories, light armor factories, and protein supply bases for our demon race. While Ashley's attention was drawn to the insect egg, Ryan quickly recounted everything he had done from dawn to dusk, as if pouring out beans. Any king would be overjoyed upon hearing such incredible news brought back by Ryan. But Ashley's face remained unchanged. She stepped forward, one step at a time. Not a repeat. Ashley's voice was a little hoarse. Great sage, don't you understand what your actions mean for the demon race? If you really want to go somewhere, I must accompany you personally. This is a warning and an order. Seeing the fatigue in the girl's eyes, Ryan nodded seriously. I promise there won't be a next time. Hearing Ryan's promise, Ashley's nerves finally relaxed. Remember what you said. Ashley turned to leave, heading back to the Demon King's castle to handle official affairs. But just as she took her first step, Ashley's figure wavered. Her steps became unsteady, like a puppet on strings, and she suddenly collapsed forward without warning. Be careful, Ryan reacted quickly, clutching the insect egg in his arm and stepping forward to steady Ashley, who was about to fall onto the stone steps. Her small body fell into his arms, surprisingly light. Ryan looked down and saw that Ashley was already asleep in his embrace. She was truly exhausted. The moment she confirmed Ryan's safe return, her last bit of strength had completely drained away. Ryan carefully carried the sleeping Ashley, just about to take her back to her room. His nose twitched. He smelled a familiar scent from Ashley's flowing hair. The strong smell of saltpeter, dust, and mineral fragments mixed together is a scent only found in crystal mines. Ryan lowered his head and looked carefully. He then noticed that Ashley's small face had faint dust marks on it. Ashley had previously changed into work clothes and left angrily. The noble ruler of the demon world personally went into the mine to dig for magic crystals all day to fill the treasury gap. After a whole day of mining, he stood at the gate of the Demon King's castle, facing the cold wind, worried about his safety. He thought, what a silly boss who's so foolish it's almost heartbreaking. A few days later, early morning at the Demon King's castle library. Next to the desk, there was a cradle covered with animal hide, with a glowing insect egg resting quietly inside. Ryan sat at the desk, holding a tray in his hands. Now, Ryan's table no longer had those bitter-tasting plant roots. On the tray was a fragrant stew of potatoes and monster meat, with a small plate of fresh stir-fried green beans beside it. Thanks to the widespread use of magic greenhouses and Ashley's magic disassembly, the food shortage among the demons is quickly improving. At least in the Demon King city, common people can now enjoy 2 full meals a day. The lively atmosphere is gradually filling the streets and alleys. Knock, knock. The demon lord of all things, Mephistopheles, placed a letter with a wax seal on Ryan's desk. Great sage, this is a message from the Night Shadow Intelligence Network, just received from the border of the human empire. Mephistopheles bowed. The sender is that fox man, Nick. Ryan opened the letter and scanned the paper, his smile growing wider. As expected of the white-gloved person I admire. This kid's execution and skills are simply born for this job, Ryan praised. The first half of the letter reported Nick's recent achievements. This overlooked young man, after returning to the caravan, decided to quietly contact the weaker and aging members of the caravan's lower ranks, who were about to be phased out. These old fellows are either getting too old or have been injured, but each of them has spent most of their lives in business. They can sense storms and dangerous creatures with their eyes closed. Every one of them has a lot of experience in trading. Nick used a promise from the demon race about raising prices as a cover. He promised this group of veterans, who were about to be abandoned by the Merchant Guild, a better future under his control. In just a few days, Nick secretly built a small but loyal and skilled ghost trading team right under his father and brother's noses, using these veterans. Being able to pick out workers from trash and still make such a good plan. This kid is really talented, Ryan said with a smile, then looked at the second half of the letter. This was Nick's first business request to the demon race, based on his sharp business sense. Winter is coming, and temperatures are dropping sharply. Ordinary people and low-level soldiers in the human empire are facing a serious shortage of warm clothing and supplies. No matter the race, staying warm will be the biggest need in the coming months. I wonder if the demon world has similar cold weather items that can be traded on a large scale? Cold weather supplies. Ryan put down the letter and gently tapped the table, lost in thought. Keeping warm is indeed a very profitable business. But the problem is, the demon race doesn't seem to have many decent cold weather supplies either. Based on Ryan's observations over the past few days, most of the clothing worn by demon civilians and soldiers is made from rough, processed monster skins. While monster skins are warm, they are hard to get and require warriors to hunt in the wilderness. This kind of supply is barely enough to meet the demon race's own winter needs, let alone sell in large quantities to the huge human empire market. Ryan's eyes wandered across the desk. Then his gaze fell on the nearby cradle, or more precisely, on the insect eggs inside it. Wait, the silk of the demon ant beast? Ryan remembered a few days ago, in the queen's chamber of the underground nest of the demon ant beast. That large chamber was completely woven from soft, white silk. He clearly remembered that when he entered that room, the temperature was noticeably higher than outside. If the silk from the magic ant beast has excellent warmth, simply weaving it could solve the demon race's winter problems and help them make a lot of money from the human empire. Mr. Mephistopheles, Ryan looked at the calm demon lord waiting nearby. How much do you know about the magic ant beast? Mephistopheles smiled and asked, Great sage, which part are you referring to? If it's about their taste and cooking methods, I think Lord Baloo, the giant belly demon, knows more. No, not eating, Ryan waved his hand. It's about the silk they spit out. If that silk is used to make clothes, how good is its warmth? Hearing this, Mephistopheles looked surprised. He thought carefully for a moment and said, Warmth? That would be top quality. He explained, the larvae of the magic ant beast spit out silk to protect their fragile bodies. This silk is not only strong but also has tiny hollow structures inside, which can lock in heat and allow good airflow. If used to make winter clothes, it would be as warm as the finest polar bear fur. Since the effect is so good, why didn't you use it to make clothes before? Mephistopheles spread his hands and said, Great sage, you must understand that before you and the Queen of Insects formed a partnership, anyone who wanted even a pound of magic ant beast silk had to fight through a swarm of 1,000,000 furious soldier ants and risk their lives to break into the nest. Historically, a few crazy human emperors sacrificed entire night groups to steal silk from the demon world, just to make a warm cloak for their beloved consorts, using magic ant beast silk to make clothes. In the whole continent, only reckless madmen would dream of such luxury, considering it an unattainable fantasy. So, no one has ever tried to mass-produce it into ordinary warm clothing. After hearing Mephistopheles' explanation, Ryan couldn't help but burst into loud laughter. Luxury? Fantasy? Using lives to fill it. It was a luxury before because there weren't enough raw materials. Now, we have millions of free workers who are well-fed and housed, and they can spit silk wildly just by eating vegetable waste. I want to turn this luxurious, dreamlike product that only emperors can afford into the most profitable winter warm-up item for the human empire this year. Rain pulled Mephistopheles. I need physical samples to verify. Mephistopheles, contact old Baloo immediately and ask him to go to the insect hive. He must send a large batch of fresh silk over as soon as possible. As you wish, great sage. I will handle it right away. After saluting, Mephistopheles turned and hurriedly left the library. Watching Mephistopheles' figure disappear, Rain sat back at the wooden desk. He pushed aside the books on magic theory and took out a few old manuscripts about the human empire's craftsmanship from the bottom of a pile of old papers. Rain knew very well that even if old Baloo brought a mountain of silk raw materials, turning them into sellable fabric would still be a challenge. The weaving technology in this world is still primitive, using simple hand-spinning wheels and ancient looms. Not only is it slow, but the fabric produced is very narrow. Having millions of silkworms output is useless without matching machines. Everything would be pointless. Low efficiency, huh? That's okay. Rain picked up a charcoal pencil and drew a rectangular frame on a blank sheepskin scroll, then added a rail structure in the middle, a flying shuttle and Jenny's spinning machine. His pen moved across the sheepskin, sketching gears, rails, and pedals, structures unknown in this world. Next, I will show you what a real textile revolution looks like. In the grand library of the Demon King's castle, the scratching sound of charcoal on sheepskin was particularly hurried. Rain was hunched over his desk, frowning. On the sketches beside him, the mechanical designs of the flying shuttle and spinning wheel had been revised over and over. Although Rain understood the basic principles of Jenny's spinning machine and the weaving loom, he was not a professional mechanical engineer. Once he tried to turn these concepts into detailed gear meshing, transmission shaft ratios, and spindle rotation angles, many vague and dead corners appeared. No, if it's like this, the bobbin will definitely get stuck when I press the pedal. Frustrated, Rain scratched his head, crumpled the sheepskin with his drawings, and casually threw it behind him. The crumpled paper gently fell around his chair. The discarded drafts nearby had already formed a small circle. Rain was completely unaware. He seemed like a madman, lost in his obsession, constantly thinking and drawing. Until the sun outside the window fully set, darkness covered the land of the demon world. It was well past dinner time, but the candle on Rain's desk still burned brightly. Meanwhile, in the dining hall of the Demon King's castle, Ashley sat alone at a long wooden table, eating her dinner little by little. Thanks to the success of greenhouse farming, tonight's meal included soft mashed potatoes and a steaming bowl of fresh mushroom soup. As she sipped the soup, she was also thinking about recent government affairs. The draft for winter supplies for the common demons has been prepared, and the repairs to the windproof buildings are arranged. What should I do next? The girl bit the edge of her wooden spoon, her eyes slightly turning. Oh, right. I need to go and check on the wild high-level monsters in the Shadow Mountains. When heavy snow blocks the mountains, those hungry creatures always come down to the border looking for food. I must go tomorrow, and maybe hunt a few to bring back for the Grand Sage. After planning her schedule, Ashley suddenly paused. She looked around the somewhat empty dining hall, feeling like something was missing from tonight's dinner. She raised her head and waved to call the busy chef in the kitchen. Is there anyone who hasn't come to eat tonight? The chef respectfully wiped his hands and replied, Your Majesty, the Grand Sage Rain has not arrived yet. His meal is still kept warm on the stove. Should I send someone to bring it to him? No need. Ashley waved her hand and stood up from the bench. Prepare his meal. I will deliver it myself. A moment later, the heavy wooden door of the Grand Library was gently pushed open. Ashley carried a steaming tray and entered. As soon as she stepped into the library, she stopped in her tracks. Grand Sage, if you keep using paper at this rate. She approached with the food, teasing in her tone. Our demon storage has finally saved up enough sheepskin paper, but it might run out before winter ends. Ryan looked up from the sea of blueprints. He rubbed his tired eyes and smiled as he answered. Don't be so stingy, silly boss. About the high cost of paper, once I finish this machine, I can find some free time to fix it for you. I promise that in the future, even if demons burn paper as firewood, they won't feel bad. Making paper is simple to him, much easier than complicated gear machines. Ashley was used to Ryan acting like this. She placed a tray on the empty space in front of him and sat down on a chair beside him. I trust your skills, Ashley said, folding her hands on her lap. But before creating miracles, I hope the wise man can eat enough first. A hungry mind can't think of good ideas. As the smell of food filled the air, Ryan's stomach growled loudly, making him forget about the blueprints and focus on the mashed potatoes. Seeing Ryan eating eagerly, Ashley's lips curled into a small smile. She picked up a rough sketch Ryan had spread on the table and looked at it carefully. The drawing was full of interlocking circles, along with tilted wooden frames and steps. What is this device about? Ashley asked curiously. Ryan mumbled, It's about weaving. With this, just a few pedal presses, we won't lack warm clothes anymore. Ashley nodded as if she understood but wasn't quite sure. Oh, I see. You looked worried just now. Did you encounter a problem? Can I help? Ryan put down his spoon and looked up. It's not an impossible problem, just some technical details I forgot. Is it about the mechanical structure? Sort of. Ryan scratched his head in frustration. I roughly know what it looks like, but I keep thinking the stress points I drew might be wrong. But just drawing a flat diagram on paper, I can't tell where the errors are. Hearing Ryan's complaints, Ashley tilted her head slightly. It's simple, she said calmly. Simple? Do you know how to solve the gear ratio problem? No, I don't. Ashley confidently shook her head. If we can't see it on paper, let's just make it directly and see if it moves. Then we'll know where the problem is. Exactly. Ryan slapped his forehead. Ashley, you're a genius. He excitedly dropped his spoon and grabbed Ashley's wrist. Quick, Use your magic. I'll handle the measurements, and you build the structure. Over the next few hours, the big library turned into a busy workshop. Make the main shaft 2 centimeters thicker. Yes, just like that. Click. A perfect solid wooden shaft appeared out of thin air with Ashley's magic. Shave a little off this gear's teeth angle. It got stuck earlier. Whoosh. A wind blade sliced through, perfectly trimming the gear's edge to be smooth. With Ashley's help, Ryan completely abandoned complicated calculations. Getting stuck? Just let Ashley use magic to change the size. Transmission problems? Just cut away the extra wood. Through Ashley's magical construction and Ryan's repeated physical trial-and-error corrections. When the clock struck midnight in the Demon King's castle, a machine full of industrial charm, an otherworldly version of a Jenny spinning machine and a flying shuttle loom, stood in the center of the big library. Ryan looked at this machine, which was the result of both their efforts, and couldn't help but laugh. He turned to look at Ashley, her eyes full of softness and determination. Ashley, Ryan solemnly made a promise to the girl before him. Before long, with this machine, I will give you a gift that's unique on the entire continent. Ashley stepped forward and picked up Ryan's plate, which he had already finished eating from. She glanced at the strange wooden machine, her face softening in the candlelight. All right, great sage. Ashley turned and walked happily toward the library door. I am very looking forward to it. The dim candlelight was gradually replaced by the morning light coming through the window. Inside the big library, Ashley had left early. Ryan was leaning over a wooden table, holding a charcoal pencil and drawing lines on a brand new sheepskin parchment. Since the physical machines have been successfully built with the help of magic, all he needs to do now is to perfectly copy the detailed blueprints of these 2 machines exactly as they are. Main shaft length, the tilt angle of the shuttle track, gear engagement ratios. While marking the precise measurements on the blueprints, Ryan quickly calculates the next steps for the demon race's light industry layout in his mind. Since the core textile machine is now created, relying only on the 2 lonely wooden frames in the library is clearly not enough. The so-called textile factory should now officially begin preparations. With standardized blueprints, demon craftsmen can mass-produce hundreds or even thousands of weaving machines. Later, recruiting several thousand demon civilians to work in 3 shifts on an assembly line. Their incredible production capacity will surely shake the entire human empire's textile industry. Just as Ryan finishes marking the last details on the blueprints, a wave of magical energy appears outside the Grand Library. Great Sage, it seems I arrived just in time. The demon lord of all phenomena, Mephistopheles, enters. Behind him, several floating magic puppets carry large, bulging sacks filled with glowing, pure white, unprocessed demon ant beast silk. Bang! The sacks are opened, and bundles of glowing, unrefined demon ant beast silk spill out in front of Ryan. Old Balu's side is quick. The first batch of fresh silk has already been delivered. Mephistopheles glances at the 2 strange wooden machines nearby, then bows slightly and asks, "The raw materials are ready. Great Sage, is there anything else I should do?" Perfect timing, Mephistopheles. Ryan rubs his aching wrist, picks up the dried mechanical structure blueprint on the table, and quickly hands it to Mephistopheles. Take this and gather all the best carpenters and blacksmiths in the Demon King City. Tell them that no matter what method they use, within half a month, I want to see at least 50 identical machines outside the city. At the same time, find a large enough open space and build a factory for me. We are preparing to establish the first textile factory in the demon realm. Mephistopheles looks at the detailed mechanical blueprint in his hand and replies, "As you wish, Great Sage. I will personally oversee the factory construction and machine manufacturing. Oh, and there's one more thing." Ryan took a piece of paper and quickly started writing on it. Then he folded the letter, put it into an envelope, and handed it to Mephistopheles. "Send this letter to Nick as fast as possible using the Night Shadows intelligence network," Ryan explained. "I told Nick in the letter that the demons have obtained excellent top-quality textile materials. But I thought about it carefully. No matter how rich the human nobles are, with their limited size, they can't fully absorb the terrifying future industrial capacity of the demons. Since we want to make money, we can't just focus on exploiting the humans." Ryan tapped his fingers on the table. "I told Nick in the letter to use the trade routes and think long-term. expand into the elf market. Those proud long-eared folks love delicate, elegant silk fabrics. And the northern dwarf tribes, though rough, hold lots of gold coins and ores, and they are in great need of warm clothing. I want Nick to turn our upcoming fabrics into the most luxurious, popular items across all races on the continent. After hearing Ryan's business expansion plan, Mephistopheles couldn't help but admire. This wise man's ambition is to gather the wealth of the entire continent. Your foresight is truly impressive. I will arrange everything right away. Mephistopheles bowed and then hurried out of the grand library with the plans and the letter. The large library was once again empty except for Ryan. Ryan stood up from his wooden chair, walked to the pile of soft, white silk, and looked at Jenny's spinning wheel and the weaving loom standing in the morning light. The factory was built, the business channels were set up, and now it was time to fulfill last night's promise. What kind of clothes should I make as a gift for Ashley? Ryan stroked his chin and fell into thought. In his mind, this petite demon queen always wore a loose black robe or tight work clothes for mining. She carried all the burdens of the demons on her young shoulders, but never thought of getting herself a decent outfit. Since she is a demon queen, she should have a cloak worthy of her status, and it must be warm enough. Rain suddenly had an idea and decided on a design, a pure white, lightweight snow fleece cloak that could resist extreme cold. He got to work immediately. Rain carefully picked up the raw, untreated silk threads and skillfully hung them on the spindle of Jenny's spinning wheel. He pressed down hard on the pedal with his foot. Click, clack, clack. With the crisp sound of gears meshing, the first spinning machine from another world roared to life. Several spindles spun rapidly at the same time, turning the tangled silk threads into even, white, and strong yarns through mechanical pulling and twisting. Next, Rain transferred the spun yarn to a shuttle loom. His hands moved quickly over the loom, like butterflies fluttering, as the wooden shuttle moved back and forth between the warp and weft, making rhythmic swish sounds. Time passed quickly amid the symphony of gears and shuttles. Rain was completely absorbed in making this gift. He was not only weaving but also constantly thinking about the cloak's cut, the windproof design of the collar, and how to make this cloak show the kingly dignity and youthful spirit on Ashley's petite frame. Before he knew it, when the sun reached directly above the grand library's dome and the bright sunlight shone through the stained glass onto the loom, click. Rain stopped pressing the pedal. He carefully took down the finished fabric from the loom. What a beautiful creation! The hollow silk threads of the magical ant beast reflected the sunlight, shining with a pure color like early winter snow. The moment he touched the fabric, Rain almost didn't feel its weight, but a gentle warmth spread through his fingertips. Under the sunlight, this fabric, which Rain named Snow Fleece, shimmered with a flowing, colorful glow. Rain picked up the scissors on the table, his eyes becoming more focused than ever. It wouldn't be long before a stunning snow fleece cloak, carrying the wisdom of the great sage, would be born from his hands. We have selected the best carpenters, blacksmiths, and rune masters from each territory and sent them immediately to the Demon King's castle, by the hot forge in the territory of the blood-blooded warrior. A nearly 3-meter-tall minotaur blacksmith, shirtless, is holding a heavy forging hammer. When he sees the drawings of flying shuttles and spinning wheels projected from the magic scroll, his copper bell-shaped eyes widen in surprise. What kind of soft, squishy things are these? The minotaur blacksmith complains loudly in a rough voice. My hammer is used for forging heavy swords and tower shields. Why should I grind tiny gears, smaller than a fingernail, and make sure the teeth fit perfectly without more than a millimeter of error? Are they trying to make fun of me? Not only him, but craftsmen all over the demon world are full of complaints when they see the drawings. In the 1,000-year history of the demons, craftsmen's job has always been to make weapons for killing. No one has ever seen such complex wooden frames that seem harmless. Shut up, idiots. A demon general, in charge of giving orders, slaps the minotaur on the back of the head and scolds sharply. This is an order from His Majesty the Demon King himself. It's a miracle machine requested by the Grand Sage. Anyone who delays the delivery of 50 units by half a month will jump into the Abyss River and feed the monsters. Hurry up, pack your tools, and march to the Demon King's castle. Under the absolute pressure from the Demon Lord and the Demon King, these rough men, used to swinging hammers and forging heavy armor, can only reluctantly put away their tempers, carry their toolboxes, and set out in a grand march toward the Demon King's castle. An unprecedented large-scale light industry project officially begins in the demon world. Meanwhile, in the corridor of the Demon King's castle, Mephistopheles just finished arranging factory supervision matters and happened to meet Cecilia, the Shadow Demon Lord, who had just returned from reporting her duties in the Shadow Realm. It seems the wind from the human empire isn't cold. You're not frozen, and your complexion is even more charming. Cecilia, Mephistopheles stopped and greeted her. Stop with that nonsense, Mephistopheles. I've been running around the human border until my legs are sore, while you're comfortably acting as the housekeeper in the castle. Cecilia lazily stretched and said, What about His Majesty? I just gathered the latest news about that brave hero and was about to report to her and the Grand Sage. His Majesty is currently handling affairs related to windproof buildings. Mephist smiled slightly, took out a letter sealed with a wax stamp that Rain had written, and handed it to Cecilia. Before the Grand Sage listens to your report, you need to act as a messenger. Use your fastest shadow route to deliver this letter to the fox person named Nick. Cecilia took the letter and looked at it with some disdain. Just for a letter, you want me, the Night Shadow Demon Lord, to run errands? Don't underestimate this letter. Inside, it contains the wealth storm that the Grand Sage is about to sweep across the entire continent. Hearing that it was Rain's letter, Cecilia put away her contempt, tucked the letter into her bosom, and then turned to head toward the Grand Library. Inside the Grand Library, Rain had just finished the first stage of cutting the snow velvet cloak. He carefully hung the shimmering, pure white prototype cloak on a wooden rack, holding a glass of water to soothe his throat. It seems I disturbed your art creation, Grand Sage. Cecilia silently appeared beside his desk, her gaze lingering on the snow velvet cloak for a moment. Assassin sister? Perfect timing for your return. Rain set down his water and pulled out a chair to invite her to sit. The letter Mephist gave you, right? And how is our brave hero, Gareth, doing lately? Mentioning the hero Gareth, Cecilia's lips immediately curved into a smile. He's not doing well at all, quite overwhelmed. In fact, Cecilia leaned back in her chair and explained, according to the artifact's guidance, Gareth has reached the northernmost part of the human empire in the past few days. In a few days, he will officially step into the edge of the elf forest to find his destined teammate. But that high and mighty hero has been suffering a lot of frustration at the border. You know how proud the elves are. Cecilia covered her mouth and chuckled softly. My spies report that the elf patrols outside the forest don't take him seriously. Those long-eared ones mocked Gareth's enchanted armor, studded with gems, as a joke, and called him a barbarian full of strength and greed right in front of him. Hearing this, Rain almost spat out his water. Barbarian? Ha ha! The son of the Grand Duke, who considers even the dirt of the slums beneath his shoes, was surprisingly treated as a barbarian by the elves. Exactly, Cecilia shrugged. The funniest part is that Gareth was so angry he nearly exploded. I heard his hand was trembling as he drew his sword, but he dared not act, because he knew that without the elves' permission, he wouldn't see the next teammate guided by the artifact. So, this proud hero could only grit his teeth and swallow his anger. It's predictable that once he truly enters the elven forest, the stubborn and proud elders will give him an unforgettable humiliation. After hearing Cecilia's report, Ryan shook his head with a smile. He wasn't surprised at all. Elves are born with a very strong sense of nature. They can subtly sense others' emotions. Ryan lightly tapped the table with his fingers, speaking disdainfully. Someone like Gareth, full of arrogance and ignorance. His sweat smell is so obvious to the elves it's like a dark pit in the night. It's strange he isn't discriminated against. Ryan took a sip from his water cup. I hope that guy trips over himself more in the elven forest, so he can learn what true humility is. Then, Ryan shifted his gaze from the distant chaos back to the textile machine and the snow-white cloak beside him. The hero's experience was just a bit of entertainment amid heavy work. He didn't have the time to sympathize with a giant baby's psychological wounds. Let him suffer in the forest. The slower the hero progresses, the better for us. Ryan stood up, brushing off some fabric scraps from his hands, his eyes full of renewed energy. Send the order. As soon as the craftsmen arrive, The textile factory will start immediately. Our focus must be entirely on building the demon race. I want to bring a gift to this world with our industrial products before winter truly arrives. Night fell deep. At the border town of the human empire, in the most luxurious suite of the inn, only a dim oil lamp was lit. Nick sat at his desk, surrounded by thick ledgers. His feather pen was busy calculating the recent funds of the caravan. Even though it was late at night, Nick still couldn't sleep. Since forming a secret alliance with the wise man at the Demon King's castle, the blood inside him had been craving power day and night. Suddenly, the flickering candle flame turned dark purple-black without warning. The temperature in the room dropped quickly. Nick stopped flipping through his ledger. As a trader who walks the edge of life and death, he hadn't yet turned around when he felt a cold, sharp touch lightly press against his neck artery. "It seems you've been having a good time lately, little fox." Cecilia, the Night Shadow Demon Lord, spoke in a deep, lazy voice that sounded magnetic in Nick's ear. Along with her words, a deadly aura belonging to a top assassin of the demon race appeared. The killing intent was so strong it seemed to bite into Nick's throat. Under the pressure of the Demon Lord, Nick felt like a tiny ant caught in a storm. Even a slight breath heavier than usual could cause a short blade to cut through his throat without hesitation. Cold sweat soaked through Nick's shirt. Cecilia narrowed her beautiful eyes slightly, her gaze full of scrutiny. As the top intelligence officer of the Demon King's castle, she had heard praise from Raynor about this foxman, but she would never easily hand over the demon race's economic lifeline to a weak fool. Tonight's assassination was a sudden test she devised. She wanted to see for herself what kind of person this white glove chosen by the great sage really was. 1 second, 2 seconds. The sharp blade even pressed tiny blood vessels on Nick's neck. But unexpectedly, under this deathly pressure that could make ordinary people collapse in fear, Nick, sitting stiffly in his chair, slowly forced himself to take a deep breath. Then, he turned his head slightly, and a stiff, polite, and respectful merchant smile appeared on his face. "Visiting late at night, I apologize for not welcoming you properly, Honorable Night Shadow Demon Lord." Nick's voice trembled slightly, but his words were clear. "Your dagger is indeed sharp, but I think you crossing half a continent to be here probably isn't just to test your blade on my neck, right? After all, a dead foxman can't create profits for the great demon race by making a single gold coin. Even in life and death moments, he still managed to bring out his usefulness as a bargaining chip. It's truly worthy of being called a merchant." Cecilia felt bored. Then she flicked her wrist, and the short blade pressed against Nick's throat turned into a shadow and disappeared into the air. "You're clever." Cecilia walked past the desk and sat down confidently on the leather sofa opposite Nick, crossing her long legs. Feeling the killing intent on her neck disappear, Nick let out a long breath and almost collapsed. He took out a handkerchief and elegantly wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. "This is a letter from the Wise One." Cecilia didn't waste words and directly threw the letter onto the desk. Nick immediately sat up straight, cupped the letter with both hands, and carefully opened it. When he saw the grand plan on the letter about expanding into the elf and dwarf markets and turning demon silk fabrics into the ultimate luxury item across the continent, Nick's breathing grew heavy. "Brilliant." Nick excitedly slapped the desk, his eyes shining with passion. He thought demons just wanted a share of the human market, but their ambition was to drain the blood of all races on the continent. "Lord Demon King, please wait a moment. I must write back to the Wise One immediately." Nick grabbed a feather pen from the table and hurriedly wrote on the sheepskin paper. After a few minutes, Nick respectfully handed the still wet reply to Cecilia. "Lord Demon King, I have already reported the recent progress to the Wise One in this letter." Nick's eyes showed fierce determination and coldness. "Next Monday, the main force of my father's trading caravan will arrive at the border of the Demon King's city, carrying 30 carts of poor-quality wheat, ready to complete the previous extortion and price hike deal. I have marked the route for the caravan's guard change and listed all trusted companions accompanying it. This time, I will make sure my father and brothers, along with that poor-quality grain, stay forever in the demon realm. Control of the caravan will soon be entirely in my hands." Killing father and brother, speaking of such things in the mouth of a fox-like person, was as casual as talking about tonight's dinner. Cecilia raised an eyebrow, and took the letter. Besides these, I also proposed a business idea about dumping products to the wise one. When it came to business, Nick radiated dazzling confidence. The wise man's vision is very far-reaching. The elves are truly a treasure trove, and the dwarves are also in great need of cold weather supplies. But Nick raised his finger, speaking passionately. Although the elves are extremely wealthy and willing to spend a lot for pure, top-quality silk, even exchanging life water and magical relics for it. But their population is too small. Even if we drained all their wealth, there's a limit. The real wealth is in the sinking markets. I suggest to the wise man that we make the finest silk into limited edition treasures for the elven royal family. At the same time, we can blend lower-grade silk, waste silk, and spider silk spun by magic ants with the cheapest linen or cotton from the human empire. Blending? Cecilia, though unfamiliar with business, sensed the cunning behind it. Exactly. Blending. Nick excitedly rubbed his hands. Blending can lower the cost of silk, but just 2 tints of silk in the fabric can make it much warmer than most winter clothes in the human empire. And the production will be huge. We sell high-end pure silk to make rare treasures for the elves, then flood the civilian and military markets of the human empire with cheap blended cold-weather fabrics. By then, the demon race will earn a lot, and I can also take a share. Nick paced back and forth in the room, talking nonstop. I will deliver your reply word for word to the wise man. Cecilia stood up, tucking the letter into her bosom. Shadows swirled beneath her feet as her figure gradually disappeared into the darkness. Fox, the wise man's vision was right. You are a born merchant and a complete villain. With Cecilia's light laugh, the room's temperature returned to normal and the oil lamp's glow brightened again. Nick stood alone in the empty room. He reached out and touched the scar on his neck, then looked out the window at the darkened territory of the human empire. The fox-like person licked the blood on his hand. Villain? No, I am the most loyal hound of the demon race. 50 miles outside the Demon King's castle, on the desolate dark red plain, dust is swirling everywhere. If a scout from the human empire were here, they would definitely be shocked into madness by what they see. Thousands of pale skeleton soldiers are lined up in neat rows, like tireless conveyor belts transporting mined stones, wood, and mud mixed with clay to the center of the plain. At the end of the line, a large, plain, and ugly flat-topped building is rising from the ground. Click, click. The skeleton soldiers' hollow eye sockets flicker with ghostly green flames. They don't need to eat or drink, making them perfect 24-hour machines for moving debris. At the top of the building, the Bone Lord Morton is hunched over, holding a bone staff with a look of boredom, directing this undead army.